Well, thank you everyone for coming to the council work session. If you have any cell phones at this time, I would request that you either turn them off or turn them on vibrate. Mr. Clerk.
Mayor William Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Catherine Rao.
Here.
Councilmember Harmony McDowell.
Present.
Councilmember Naima Gilyard.
Here.
And Councilmember Rosie Jackson.
Here.
So, Mayor, you have a floor.
Okay. Call the first item.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, you have a series of budget presentations today, and your first presentor will be fire and rescue. Chief, you might want to give us.
See, I gotta have an assistant to operate it.
Okay. Oh, is it turned on?
Is it turned on? Good evening, council. It's my honor to be here, and I'm Larry Few. I serve as fire chief for City of South Fulton Fire Rescue Department, and I'm honored to serve in that position. I want to just tell you just a little bit about me. I've been in the fire service 37 years. There has been a few, my last name, living in Fulton County, namely South Fulton, for the last 70 years. No, I'm not 70 years old. My father is around 88 years old. So we've been in the county in South Fulton a number of years. My boys were all graduates of Banneker High, going on to Clark Atlanta University, and Brown University, and Tennessee State University. So South Fulton has been a place where I live, work, and play, and do business. So I'm honored to serve as your fire chief. Our fire goals as we go into 2019 are very, I think, robust. We have started the process of automatic aid agreements. As you know, at your last council meeting, you approved the automatic aid agreement with Union City, and on the 24th, Union City approved the agreement also. So we're well on our way to establishing an aid agreement. We now go to 911 communications so that we input the data and the street response strings in, and that's going to happen very, very, very quickly. This means that what we have done now is added additional stations to the array. Let me set you up and tell you the difference between automatic aid and mutual aid, because I think you need to understand it. Mutual aid is when a jurisdiction gets on the scene and their resources are tapped, they may call us for assistance. Automatic aid is we actually drop boundary lines in areas that are both amenable to us and amenable to the other establishment, and they respond, and we respond automatically. There's no call or anything of that nature, we respond. So what that does is increase the number of stations in the array that will be responding. We will still respond in the automatic aid areas, but we now have partners that respond with us that can reduce our response times. Next, we're working very, very vigorously to reduce our response time to on scene. We're at the 6-minute, 29-second mark. I think that we can do better. I think that we can shave 30 seconds off of that so that we're in on scene, on average, within 6 minutes. And 6 minutes is important because it works into the area of cardiac survivability, 4 to 6, that we get on scene and we're doing invasive maneuvers, and so that our partners, which would now be Grady, comes in about 3 minutes after we do. And you're transported onto the hospital, then things are working well for you. So we are working vigorously to shave seconds off of our response time. And we're doing it through a variety of ways on how we now categorize responding to scenes where we stage. When we stage, the clock stops. Other times, the clock kept going until we actually made contact with a person or patient or whatever. But we're not doing that anymore. When we acknowledge responding, we got to get up and get out of the station pretty quickly. We're looking at shaving minutes off of that because we want to get in that 1 minute mark. When we get that call, we want to be on that engine and acknowledge responding, and we can do that. The next area is to lower the ISO rating. This is very important. What the ISO can do for us is come in and assess how well we are delivering the service. They measure our equipment, they measure our water supply, they measure the number of personnel we have, and it can lower the insurance premiums for both residential and business occupancies. We are now class 3. I'd like to see us become a class 1. And we can do it. And we're taking the steps that are necessary to do it. Tied into our ISO rating are our mutual aid agreements that we're signing now. The next is a very robust program that we have in the fire department where we install these smoke detectors. They can increase your chances of surviving a home fire by 50% if you have a working one in your home. So what we're doing now is we're targeting neighborhoods that we will go out. We won't hand you the detector. We're going to be the ones to install it. You can call 470-890-7575, get the office, and tell us you don't have a smoke detector. We'll come out and we'll install it. We're going to be very aggressive in that program. If we have a fire in a neighborhood, a community, we're going to go back in. If that fire occurred in an occupancy that did not have early warning, some smoke detector or alarm system of that nature, we're going to go back and we're going to be reinstalling smoke detectors throughout the neighborhood. So that's a very robust program we have, and I really like it because it gets the engine companies and all the crews involved.
Repeat that number again. I think you might have misstated it.
470-809-7575. All right. Next, you have what are our capital expenditures. And let me just set you up for right now. You don't see anything up there on our fire engines, but let me tell you what the directions that we have been given by our manager as it relates to our fire apparatus. We had engine 2 to be totaled on the interstate. A drunk driver hit it. That engine was totaled. It was one of the new Gladiators. The insurance company has paid off. We encumbered close to $500,000 in funds. The directions were to leverage those dollars to get as many units as we could. And what we've done is contacted a bank and asked them to give us some quotes on leasing a ladder truck and 2 fire engines. A ladder truck would cost you normally $1.25 million. An engine would cost you $500,000 each. So we have what we have proposed to our manager, and I'm sure that as the process nears an end, there may be some conversations that he will probably have with you on this, but it's a 10-year lease. The funds that are necessary to lay out to initiate this lease do not impact this year's budget. They impact the 2020 budget. That's why you're not seeing it there. So for us to get a ladder truck and 2 fire engines over a 10-year lease, the expenditure is $259,000. We think that we more than hit the mark on the directions that we've been given by the manager. You can see the equipment up there. I don't know if I need to go through all of it. Extrication equipment, that's the equipment that we use when we do invasive maneuvers to cut people out of things and do heavy rescue and that kind of stuff. What's important up there too is the fire safety house. This is a big ticket for the community that we get a new fire safety house. The one that we have is at that 20-year mark. It is worn out. There's been hundreds of thousands of kids that have gone through that fire safety house, and it really shows it. Something up there also that I'll call your attention to is the $150,000 in station repairs. This is the first time that I have laid out a budget when I've been given money in a budget to repair some stations. So that's a big commitment on the part, that the manager has seen fit to help us with, in that we got $150,000 to start to do some repairs in our stations, which are sorely needed. These are our operating costs. This is when you go through all those. They are self-explanatory. We are very economical with how we are using the people's money. And I call your attention to uniforms. There's $200,000 up there in uniforms. That's $100,000 less than what we asked for last year. We understand that we too have to support and provide a service to our citizens and do it as efficiently as possible. So the $200,000 is up there where we will have a recruit class of about 18 students. And most of that money is going to provide them with turnout gear, which is $3,500 a set. We have to provide them uniforms to work in while they're in recruit school. That's about $22,000. And then when you look at the repairs that are going to take place when they are in recruit school, we have to have somewhere around $30,000 to $35,000 to do that. So most of that money really is going to their uniform service. I think all of that is self-explanatory, and you go around through all of that. This is the fire department org chart. I don't think that we're top heavy. I think that we have an array of people there that really get the job done. Our mission is to provide fire, life safety, and support services that are relationship focused and results oriented. And I can tell you that's a very efficient process of how we have our org chart set out. We operate out of 2 battalions, the 1st and the 3rd. You have fire station number 1, 5, 7, and 15 in the 1st battalion, and 2, 3, 11, 13, and 19 in the 2nd battalion. Now, moving forward, I want to go back to the response times because it's very important to me. I just kind of told you that I have family that lives in the city of South Fulton, and what I lay out for your protection is the same service that I'm laying out for those family members. We can break the 6-minute mark on our response time, and we're going to be working very diligently to do that. That's our charge, because we have to provide for the economy, efficiency, and welfare of the citizens that we serve, and we can do it. We're going to do it. Now, the average response time with Grady, I got to tell you, we go from 26 minutes to 11 minutes. Astounding. And Grady, all of the area fire chiefs, we meet once a month, and we go over the data that Grady is presenting to us. They tell us that when they fully ramp up after September 1st, they want to try to get us down to 9 minutes. Imagine that. I get on scene in 6, they get on scene in 9. In 3 minutes, a lot of work is going on to get a loved one or your friends or the citizens into the ambulance and get them transported for hospital care. That is a big item there. So Grady's at the 11-minute mark. I wanted to just call your attention to how we're growing. We're at, really that number should be updated. We're at the 7,000 mark for total calls. And that's not, it's not going to go down. The EMS calls are the bulk of our calls. but we provide a service that is second to none. And moving forward, we are going to hit some targets and goals this year that are going to be great for the city, the residents, and the businesses. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Chief. Ms. Guns and then Ms. Willis.
Thank you, Chief Hughes. I have just a few questions. I guess my first question, what is Rocket Internet?
That's the internet system that allows us on our apparatus to access the Wi-Fi, so we can download plans to make critical decisions while we're on scene.
Okay.
They'll be on the apparatus.
Okay, I didn't understand what that was.
Okay.
And I know that we are very close to signing the mutual aid agreement with Union City. What about the other municipalities?
Yes, we have now, the aid agreement is under review with the city of Fairburn. I looked in the next 30 days, and it'll be the same, crafted the same way as the agreement with Union City. It's going to be the same. That should make its round through Fairburn's legal system and then come back to us, and it'll be fairly quickly after that. So give us 30, 45 days.
And my last question regarding communications, do you have a public information officer, or is that communication farmed out through the city's communication director, or you have your own in-house?
We don't really have it in-house. However, we do have the fire marshal that acts as a quasi-PIO, but we have the city's Ms. Butts Freeman as the PIO. If there was something really happening where it would hit the news, the technical part of it is done by us, but certainly the community concerns are answered by our PIO for the city.
And the smoke alarm program, I think that's awesome.
Yes.
How are you going to use your education or your community outreach officers to promote it, or
Yes, we have
citizens
five.
need to know about it?
Yeah, our fire education officers are going to be the ones that get that out, but they work in tandem with our engine companies. It's important that the engine companies, the firefighters, make contact with the public too that they serve. So it's a two-pronged approach. The fire education officers may set the program up and go out and initially get the companies started, but it is really a company level type program where the firefighters are actually doing the install, where the educators are going out with them to talk to the public to kind of get them educated on why we put it here and the height and that kind of thing.
And is there funding that you put in your budget for that, or?
We receive funding from the state, and we just got a check in to purchase 200 of them.
Okay.
So we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Willis and then Ms. Gilyard, followed by Rob.
Good afternoon, Chief. Thank you for the presentation. I have a few questions. I've seen your capital budget, the replacement for the repair, the amount for repair of stations. My question is, and my concern is, I think that the fire department is doing an excellent job, but the working conditions that our fire personnel are in are horrific. And I'm not, blaming you. There are several reasons it's that way. But what I would like to see with us being a new city, if we can't do it better, then, we should be a city. And I know one of the stations, worst stations, is Fire Station 1. And there is a plan that already exists. There's already a feasibility study that exists. And so I think I've talked to you about it, and you said it was like a $2.3 million capital investment to get that station. I would like to see us, can you give me some goals towards working towards replacing fire stations that need to be replaced?
Well, as I said earlier, this is the first time that I have received funds in a budget that actually go to station repair. And I think this is the first step in that direction. Certainly, there's some aggressive approaches that we can take. But, you know, we have to, and I do too. The budget that we've laid out more than meets for the economy, efficiency, and well-being of our citizens as we deliver the service. But when we start talking about building an array of stations, there's a lot that has to come together for us strategically and financially for us to do that. And we certainly have had discussions about that, but what I can tell you, what we're doing right now with our aid agreements, with our partners in South Fulton to respond and help us in kind to deliver service, we're taking steps in the direction. I know that we are going to get there when we strategically set the priorities to go toward building our stations.
Okay, the mayor is asking me to yield to him, and I will do that, but I understand response time, and I'm happy with the work, the service. What I'm unhappy with is the conditions
I understand
that our workers are in. And, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, when I toured some of those stations, I felt like crying, because I wouldn't want a dog to work in those conditions. And I would like to see us aggressively work towards not only repairing these stations, but, you know, we talked for years about replacing some of these fire stations, especially Fire Station 1 for years. I would say even over a decade. And I would like to see us work aggressively to get the station replaced. Number one, not only for the workers, but these are supposed to be safe havens for our community. And so I'm going to yield to the mayor. I know you have something to say, but I'm not going to back down with that, city manager.
Councilmember, it's not for you to back down to. I think there's a capital budget that you actually have control over and can make changes. I think this is our first best effort. While I think the chief and all of our staff have been very clear that we want to invest very heavily in not only our facilities, but in our people. But I would also say that this is the true first year of the city, and we cannot correct the 10 to 15 years of wrong that you pointed out in one budget. And so I think for us to start off with a strong capital budget is step one. And so if the council sees it fit for us to accelerate that, then I think the budget is in your hands and you have the ability to do so. I think this is just our first effort, and I think I would agree with the chief that this is a fairly strong first effort, and it is our plan to take that even further.
Okay, well, I would ask you to work with the chief and come up with a plan and try to work towards aggressively replacing some of these fire stations that are in disrepair. Because again, not only are our workers not in good working conditions, but these are supposed to be safe havens for our community. And the black mold problem, has that been totally resolved for all the stations?
the black mold. I'm sorry.
The mold.
Oh, yes, that has been addressed and taken care of.
Okay, I'm gonna yield to the mayor, and then I have two more questions, Mayor.
Just brief, I just want to add to what you're saying, Mr. Manager. I do agree with what you're saying, that we're moving in an intentional way to get things classified. But just to piggyback on what Councilwoman Willis said, I think even once we get there, I would like to see an aggressive plan of maintenance. Because, you know, they didn't get their way overnight. And a lot of our people who would get fired, some of our fire people are women. And so I'm just saying that, you know, we need to go in, there's got to be somebody in the fire department whose responsibility is to inspect and to draw down on these things before they get to be too big. And so I agree with you, agree with the manager. We're moving intentionally in that direction, but if we don't have an aggressive inspection program, if we don't tell our fire personnel what we expect of them in terms of our buildings and in terms of our equipment, then, you know, we'll be right back where we were again. So I just want to add that to what you said, and I'm finished.
Okay. I know that you mentioned the smoke alarm program, but what about, have there been any conversations about carbon dioxide testing and establishing one for the community? Is that something that the fire division has ever looked into?
No, we have never broach that area. However, the new smart technology and smoke detectors and that kind of thing, we would, educate our public to install additional carbon monoxide detectors. The detectors that we will get right now are ionization and photoelectric combination kind.
And the reason I'm asking that is because with a lot of development that goes on around in our community, I know that there was a development that was behind my community that triggered, residents to get tested for the carbon monoxide. And because of the burning and because of a lot of disturbance in the earth, that triggered some gas. So I just wondered if you all ever thought about incorporating that in your...
Now, let me just say to you, we do have the ability to test. We do that. We have equipment on our engines that we can test the particulates for carbon monoxide. We do have that. Now, prior to that, our education program to target our citizens is going to be in the area of providing smoke detectors, and we'll couple that with an education link to talk about carbon monoxide.
Okay.
That's how we can address that.
Okay, and my last question is I know we're in the city, but do you think that it will be worth, anytime in the near future, tasking our lobby team whenever we hire one to pursue the transport license?
I got to tell you, you're really reading my mind here. Part of the legislative agenda that I'd like, one of the points that I have wanted to push forward, and I have, is for us to go down the road to get a license. What it does for us, we may not go or get into the area of transport immediately, but it allows us to control our zone, our own destiny. You see, to move one vendor out and get another one in, it took me 6 months, maybe a year to get it done, because I'm working through a governmental agency called Region 3, and I have to produce data, the analytics and everything. And although I do sit on the board, committees have to be established. So to get a license, first it allows us to control the zone. And we say if a vendor's good and the service is fine. And next, we can go down the road looking way over the hood of the car into transport. Because you got to remember, there's a capital outlay that's necessary for us to do that.
Okay. All right. Ms. Gilyard?
Hi.
Hi.
I think your department is doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
All of my questions are related to the budget.
Ms. Gilyard.
In 4 areas.
Yeah.
I always do that. Okay. Thank you. I have 4 areas that I'm focused on: the personnel section, the operating section, capital, and then the total budget. Okay. So I looked at the budget and I looked at the personnel section, and I see that budgeted for this fiscal year, you have 1 less total than last year. Last year you had 180 something. This year you have 170 something. But when I look at the salary line, I see that that it's more than 100% higher than it was this year. But yet you've reduced the budget by 1 person. So these are some things that you'll probably need to think about, because I have the numbers and all of that. And you know the budget has a lot of numbers in it, so I'm not expecting you to respond to the numbers as much as just take a look at it whenever you can.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's one question. And then I have a similar question for the fringe benefits, because the fringe benefits are over 50% higher in 2019 than they were in or they will be in 2019 than they are in 2018. And I don't think that we've made any fringe benefits changes, so please look at that.
Yes, ma'am.
The next one is operating expenses. And I saw that 200,000 is budgeted for uniforms. And I said, well, they came over in February and did they get new uniforms then? I wonder why, you need, more money in the uniform line. And then just two other ones in this section. Equipment would be rented for $30,000 and it wasn't budgeted in 28. And I just really wanted to know what that's for. And professional and technical services, 30,000 for one and 25 for the other. So just look at those categories, unless you want to respond right now. You can if you want to.
Well, let me just take the one where we have the $200,000 in uniforms. We plan to have a recruit class with 18 recruits in there.
Okay.
And what we've estimated for the turnout gear is $63,000. And then we have to outfit them in uniforms. They are going to soil, tear up, and we're going to have to discard and buy more. So we've estimated at $22,000 for additional uniforms. Then when we look at the maintenance of the protective clothing that they will wear, because they'll be crawling, it'll get hot, it may degrade. We're looking at somewhere around $80,000 to keep all 18 of those recruits in the type of clothes that they need. Plus, we'll be looking at some the uniforms or SCBAs and turnout gear that our regular folks will be wearing. And then we look at promotions. We're due to have some promotions made. And we estimate about $15,000 to buy new shirts. When the firefighter puts on a Nomex shirt, the price tag on it, because it's firefighter Nomex, is probably somewhere around $150 for a shirt. And we have promotions that we have to make. So we have the badges, the brass, the nameplates, everything. So it comes, you're hitting right at $200,000.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So I'll look at all of the rest of that information, ma'am, and I have staff here, they're recording everything, so we'll get you the answers you need.
I'm almost finished. And then the total budget. So the total budget, if you compare 2018 to 2019, and 2018 has the IGA in it, that kind of skews it a little bit. And so I just wanted to make that statement.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the last one is the capital budget. And the capital budget of 150. And I'm glad that we're moving in that direction, and I agree with what, almost everything that Councilwoman Willis said about the condition, and because I had down here the mold as well, because I think a lot of people know about it and ask about it. But I'm glad that there is 150, and I really don't know if it's enough to address the conditions at many of the stations. So in my area, in my district rather, I got from my folks in my district about Fire Station 17 on Ridge Road, and that the cabinets and countertops in the kitchen need to be replaced. The driveway needs to be repaired. The roof did leak. They don't know if there's mold there or not. The lighting needs to be upgraded, landscaping, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just going to forward this to you,
Yes,
so that you will have it. But I wanted to bring this to your attention and to say thank you so much.
My pleasure, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gilyard. Wow. Then Mr. Khalid, then Ms. Jackson, followed by Ms. Willis, and we'll end with Ms. Willis.
Thank you, Chief. I have a couple of questions. One deals with address markings. I think I had raised this with you previously in terms of my concern about not being able to read some of the addresses on the residents. and particularly with the new ambulance service, I think that's important. I'm glad they have a great response time, but I can also imagine that they might be challenged in reading some of those addresses as well. So that's something I'd like the fire department to kind of take a look at and focus on in terms of making sure we have great visibility on the addresses.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a question. I see in this operating expense budget is now zeroed out for the false alarm contract. I wanted to know, is that no longer in place? And then I have to ditto everything I heard Councilwoman Willis and Gilyard speak to as it relates to facilities. I know you have at least one grant writer on staff in your department, is that correct?
No, the person is not charged as a grant writer.
Okay.
Let me say this to you. Here's what we have done. We've got people to go up and look at how we write safer and those kind of grants. I will be going as a representative of the IAFC to see how we do the safer and AFG grants again. We just happen to be, I was going to tell you, pretty good at what we're doing because in the last 10 years, we're talking about a department that's gotten over $10 million in safer and working off of a $1.75 million grant.
Okay.
Now, so we know what we're doing, but there's not a grant writer per se on staff. But we know what we're doing.
Okay. And then my other two just observations. I don't know where we are as a city in terms of tracking or GIS tracking of where our fire hydrants are in the city. I know that falls under the city of Atlanta in terms of water, but I know I've noticed and at times reported inoperable fire hydrants.
Yes.
That's something, I don't know where we are in terms of understanding what assets are in the footprint of our city, but tracking of our fire hydrants.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Yeah. Let me. Certainly, Atlanta Watershed manages that process. What we've done is to contact significant partners in the city of Atlanta so that when we have a hydrant that is out, we know who to call. And it may take 2 weeks, maybe 30 days to get it done, but we do have that contact person. As far as GIS is concerned, there is a database. We just have to, I think, import it over from the county to the new city. I'm not sure if that's been done, but there's a way to track where our hydrants are. And when they go out of service, if you see it out of service, you have to call us and let us know. I've reported some on my way home and that kind of thing, and we usually get them fixed pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's something, city manager, I would love for us to make sure that we've imported that information, because I've seen one, I think on Stonewall, I know it was well over a month, maybe 2 months.
Where's this?
Stonewall and, yeah. So whatever our process of making sure that we know where our hydrants and that they're routinely being checked to make sure they're operable.
Yeah, that one has been entered. It has been entered. Okay. So we'll circle back with Atlanta and find out what was the problem. They should have fixed it by now.
And last comment, as it relates to, I appreciate you elaborating on not having a grant writer in your department. So thank you for that clarification. But as we look to fill that position, I think it's really important. We have a unique opportunity as a new city to try to tap into some of these local funders who will provide support for capital improvement projects. And I think our fire stations are a great place to start. And so that's something I also want to put on our radar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Khalid? Thank you for all you. I'm going to hold most of my questions. We'll just talk later because we probably should move on. But I do want to ask this publicly. Is there a mutual aid agreement with Clayton County? Is that something that's done? Or?
No, we don't have a mutual aid agreement with Clayton County. Now, having said that, as we get into the agreements of automatic aid, that is what I'm mostly interested in. That is the aid where We can lower our ISO, receive lower premiums for residents and businesses. We have to really look at the quid pro quo kind of concept that if we give you what can you do for us? And the partners that we're really looking at right now are certainly Union City. We're looking at Fairburn. We're looking at College Park and East Point. We're looking at those partners, and for the other partners in South Fulton, we'll kind of look at them to see if there's a give and take that can exist, if you understand what I mean.
I do.
I don't want to just give all of our services, which are exceptional,
Right.
and they have to give us the exceptional services back.
I understood. So the next two questions are actually for the city manager and our CFO/treasurer. Do we have a position of grant writing in the fire department or in any individual department? Because it was my understanding that we just have one grant writer for the entire city. And we don't have her now, so.
So we have a grant administrator position.
Right.
It's a little bit different than the grant writer, but there are talented people who are on various staffs who have had success writing grants. That is not their full-time role. And I think that's one of the areas that we pointed out. I wouldn't necessarily say as a deficiency, but as an opportunity as council makes decisions on changes they would like to make to the budget, is that if you would like to specifically have or encourage us to even use funding for contractual services for the grant writing portion, I mean, I think that's something that we think is a great opportunity. I'm not, I guess it could be a full-time position, not sure if it has to be, and I think we could definitely either work with you or defer to you on what you would prefer to see in your budget.
Okay. If there is an overall city, if there were something that affected multiple departments, I don't know, I just think that's something that we should be looking at, is maximizing across all of our departments. So I will leave it to the department heads to figure out how you want to govern yourselves. The last question, though, it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the price that we have been paying for certain things from Fulton County may have gone up since the IGA, and I just wanted an update budget-wise around that. Because I thought we were overpaying even when we were in the IGA, but it sounds like they think we were underpaying.
So I think in some areas we have overpaid, but I think we have some IGA cost savings that we've had as well. So I say overall, we're probably maybe right at budget, but there are some instances where in the IGA we have saved money, but in others it's cost us more. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there are two departments. We have emergency management that was under IGA. Now we are on our own. When we are with the IGA, there are some services that were being funded by Fulton County General Fund. Now we are on our own. We have to buy the radios. We have to do all that. So EMS has gone up than it was covered under IGA. Then we have animal control. Animal control, July you just passed, we have got a different agreement with Fulton County because they are getting into agreement with other communities. That one again, it has gone up. So they are all, emergency management is out of IGA, animal control is out of IGA, those two. But as the manager said, there are some savings in IGA, but we will not fully know until everything has been reconciled at the end of the IGA agreement in November.
Thank you. I'm going to yield to Councilman.
I just had a quick question. So we did pass a resolution for Smart City Solutions, Councilwoman Rowell and Councilwoman Willis. And you mentioned about purchasing new equipment and leasing new equipment. Are you all taking that into consideration when purchasing this equipment?
Well, for instance, when we get ready to purchase the engines, we're going to use the HGAB consortium to do it. And all the bidding has been done. There's no, we don't put anything out on the street. Everything is there. It streamlines our process to purchase equipment. Virtually everything in the fire service, we can get it there. So we'll take a look, certainly, at the smart cities approach, but we save probably $25,000 a unit on the Spartan ERV Gladiators when we got them through the consortium.
So is there certain guidelines, I'm assuming that you go by as far as age, when you're purchasing this equipment, so you're not gonna go and be leasing like a 1993 fire truck?
No, that get us back into this.
Okay.
No.
I know we wanna be cost effective, but I'm just trying to figure out,
No. Yes, ma'am, we'll be cost effective.
Okay, Ms. Jackson?
Chief, I just want to thank you for your presentation. It was excellent, and I do know that you were well vested in this community. I know your parents from years ago.
Thank you.
And I am also happy that we switched over to grade and the response time, simply because I am got a little pet peeve with this little stroke victims. So they have to get there by a certain time in order to reverse certain things. And I did see experience with me with my brother that he was not able to reverse because of the response time from my end. And so I appreciate what you said, what you've done, and look forward. But the $150 now, $150,000, that's going to be enough for you all to make change?
Well, let me say this to you. This will be a positive step, first step that we're taking. Well, I mean, there's HVAC systems that we can upgrade or into maintenance contracts. There are water heaters that we can do, ice machines.
So all these things, so you can, with this 150, you can get this done in my fire station.
I can't, it's not, the 150 is a first step in the approach to begin to have some type of maintenance established for our fire stations. It's not going to do all 100%, but this is a great first step for us.
Okay.
Ms. Jackson?
Ms. Jackson, I think the manager was very explicit about that. You know, we're controlling the budget, so we feel that it's not enough, and we have the right to.
Okay? We'll close with Ms. Wood.
I was gonna say this because it hit a nerve for me. I've been struggling with washing public safety uniforms for 18 years. And to me, you all don't have enough uniforms. You are military, you're held to paramilitary standards, and so that you are expected to deliver service and look good doing it. And I think the police department and the fire department need to work towards making sure our personnel have uniforms for every day of the week. Because the element that you deal with, and especially in the summertime when it's extremely busy, extremely hot, when you have some fire personnel saying they're riding in trucks with no air conditioning. And I know that for police officers, they have to wear all kinds of equipment under their uniforms, they have to wear bulletproof vests, they're sweating. You know, it's easy for them to go through those uniforms. So you're never going to get an argument out of me as far as when I see something in the budget where you're requesting for uniforms. I don't think our personnel has enough uniforms, so we need to work towards making sure they have a uniform for every day of the week. We're not Mayberry. We're the city of South Fulton, third largest city, and Metro Atlanta, fifth largest city in Georgia. We need to treat our workers like it.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Chief, thank you so much for an excellent report.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk?
The next presentation is from Parks and Recreation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council. I am Tony Phillips, and I have the honor to serve as the Director of the Department of Parks and Recreation. I've been working now for about 30 years. I spent the first 15 years of my career in private sector. The last 15 years I have been in municipal services, specifically here in South Fulton. And over that time I have progressed through a successive series of supervisory and management roles. I've gained a lot of practical experience in operations, budgeting, staffing, strategic planning, contracts, grants, management. It's been a very busy 15 years. I'm now excited to be in the new city of South Fulton. I've been in South Fulton since I was 8 years old. My family moved here in 1972. I was in the 3rd grade at Kathleen Mitchell Elementary School, lived right off of Herschel Road. And I have been here ever since. This is not just a place where I live, it's where I've grown up my entire life. I'm a proud 1982 graduate of Lakeshore High School, that most of you now know as Westlake. My father served as a city councilman in City College Park for nearly 25 years. I'm a homeowner, a husband, a father of 4 Fulton County School students. My roots are deep here. It means more to me than a job description could ever fully capture, because I spent my entire life here. I made a very conscious decision to raise my family here. That's not an accident. I did it because this is where I grew up, and it's where I chose to have my children grow up. So with that, I'd like to tell you about the FY 2019 budget for the City of South Fulton Department of Parks and Recreation. Let's begin with our goals. First and foremost, we'd like to enhance, diversify, and add additional recreational programs. For a number of years now, we have focused largely in the youth arena, and we will always do that. That's always going to be a core part of what we do, and we want to grow and expand. I've got some information to share with you a little further in the presentation. But we also recognize that there are other elements of our community that we need to do a better job of reaching. Active adults, seniors, families. We've got a lot of room to grow. But the excitement is there's a lot in this budget that's going to allow us to take the right steps in those directions. So that's our first goal. Secondly is facility lighting and upgrades. You're going to hear a lot about our capital budget in just a few minutes. And to be very frank with you, the budget open houses that we had under the leadership of our city manager were just eye-opening. It gave us a chance to sit down in a forum, as you know, and talk one-on-one with residents. And we heard the same message over and over again when it came to Parks and Recreation. People wanted to see our facilities upgraded. They wanted to see us do a better job of doing what's been neglected in many instances for many years. And this budget reflects that. Our next goal for the year is to improve the South Fulton Tennis Center by doing some court resurfacing there. It is a really amazing facility that we don't believe is reaching its full potential right now. So we've got some specific plans to upgrade the facility. It is the largest tennis facility closest to the world's busiest airport. And we think the combination of those factors, along with some others, can make us, put us in a position where we can maximize the potential of that facility, first and foremost for our residents, but also to be a revenue generator for our city. The next goal we have for the year is to develop a STEM-based programming option. I know many of you have heard time and again the concern of our parents about education in our community. That is not our primary charge. As we all know, the school board handles that. That doesn't mean we can't make positive steps in that direction. And so we've included something in this budget to allow us to begin to develop STEM-based programming, science, technology, engineering, and math. Many of the students in our community simply can't afford tutors, but they walk out of a middle school or elementary school and walk into a recreation center. So we can be creative and find a way to add resources there. We think we can make a difference in education, even from our standpoint. And lastly, it is to develop a parks master plan. I won't go into great detail at this moment because I'm going to talk about that a little later in the presentation. What I will tell you is that it's an industry standard. Every legitimate parks and recreation agency has a parks master plan. It's one of those cornerstones that will open the door to other things. And we'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment. So I wanted to next kind of spend a few minutes talking about that capital improvement plan that I referenced a little bit earlier. We've talked about tennis court rebuilding. There is a difference, as many of you may be aware, between resurfacing and rebuilding. For years under the county, the most we were able to do is to resurface, which is really just filling in cracks on overused courts and painting them. They'll look good for a little while, but as soon as winter comes and it gets cold and summer comes and it expands, guess what? Those cracks come right back. We don't want to repeat that same process again. We want to do better. That means we need to rebuild the courts. It means digging all the way down to the surface and literally building the courts up from the foundation. When you do that, you can expect a lifespan typically of at least 7 years, and with good maintenance, we think we can hopefully get to 10 years. That will give us better infrastructure for our residents and allow our facilities to achieve the potential that we think they're capable of achieving. Next on the list is playground upgrades and replacements. This is always an ongoing effort for us, and we're clearly behind the curve based on where we've been funded previously under the county, and we want to make some strides in making sure that we're replacing outdated equipment, adding state-of-the-art equipment. We've got a number of places where that's needed. Cedar Grove, not the least of which, because it was not included the last time playgrounds were funded, and so that's clearly in the plan for this year, and we look to make those improvements across the city. Athletic field renovations. As you well know, we have an active youth athletic programs across soccer, baseball, football, and youth basketball. It engages literally thousands of youth in our community during a calendar year, yet we've not been able to make the strides in maintaining our athletic fields in a way that makes sense and that is fiscally responsible. This budget allows us to do that. We need to resod some of our fields. It's not an inexpensive process, but it's a necessary one. We want our kids to feel as proud of the fields that they play on here in South Fulton as they do when they go away to play. But right now, that's not the case. We recognize that, but we think this budget is going to help us start moving in that direction. There are a few other capital budget items that I wanted to mention very briefly. We are looking to replace our 15-passenger van fleet. It is quite old. We use them on a daily basis for after school and summer camp. And so over the next 5 years, we'll begin moving in that direction, replacing one each year. We also are looking to begin moving in the direction of adding HVAC to our gymnasiums at both Burdett and Sandtown. If you've been in either one of those gymnasiums in the summertime, I don't have to tell you what a need that is. And so we've got funding in this budget over the next 5 years that will allow us to address that in ways that we've not been able to do before. We've also got some funding for remote security cameras. Specifically, there was a project in the past to do this at Creel that never came to fruition under the county, and so hopefully this budget will allow us to start addressing some of those needs. I am confident that this capital budget will impact the entire city and all districts over the next 5 years with both new investments as well as addressing some of the areas that have been ignored, to be frank with you, for a number of years. I think it's a very aggressive start for a new city. It's some bold steps allowing us to make improvements. I would also be transparent and tell you that it doesn't address every need that we have. I asked for more than the city manager wanted to give me, but that's okay. I think this budget is a good first step into 2019. It's going to allow us to make improvements that our residents will begin to see in fairly short order and make significant improvements. Next, I wanted to take a few moments to highlight some of the areas of our operating expenses. Professional services, if you look at this budget versus last year, you'll see that there's a significant decrease in professional services. That's largely attributable to the fact that we had expenses associated with the IGA with Fulton County that had to be accounted for in professional services in FY 2018. And so we expect to see, as we have now transitioned successfully, those expenses will decrease. And so there are some differences in that area. Contracted services, which you see at about $100,000, that is the area where once we bring in revenue from youth athletic associations, instructor services contracts, the tennis center, and all these various areas, we use that specific funding line to pay out based on contractual agreements to the partners that we have specific agreements with. One area that I did want to take a few minutes to talk about is specifically our security service. Now you look at that and it looks like there's nothing there, but actually there's quite a bit there. As we moved into this budget, we have petitioned and included in this budget to hire 8 park rangers. These park rangers are police officer 1 positions. Let me tell you what a significant difference that is. Currently, under our current arrangements, we have about 128 hours a week that we're able to fund. That basically covers Saturday and Sunday. Yet we have 7 days a week when parks are open. By moving in this direction with 8 park rangers, we more than double the number of hours we'll be able to utilize in a week, from 128 currently to 320 with 8 full-time officers. That will give us the ability to cover peak times during evenings and during the week when we're currently not able to do that. I think that will make a significant and immediate difference. I am working with Chief Meadows as he's going to coordinate and help us determine how best to align these 8 park rangers, because they will in fact be police officer 1. And so we're going to be working very closely with Chief Meadows. He and I have already begun that dialogue to figure out how best to do that, whether to attach them to the police department and have them work parks or some other arrangement. But know that that dialogue is going on in close partnership with Chief Meadows and the police department. We're excited. I think this is going to make a huge difference in our ability to create a family-friendly environment in our parks, which is essential to everything else we do. If people don't feel safe, not much else really matters. And so we think this is going to do a far better job of helping us to provide a safe, family-friendly environment. Next, I wanted to briefly look at our organizational chart. As you see, the park rangers is highlighted there on the right side of the screen, and we're excited about that effort. We're also adding a program manager position in this budget. We are seeking to do STEM-based programming, as I mentioned, and we need a person in place that's going to manage programs like this, look at contract compliance, make sure that we're getting measurable and tangible results, be able to report back out so that I can make sure that we're getting out of these programs what we set out to do. And so that position is going to be very key for us. There are a couple of additional recreation positions as well. That will help us in managing the programs that we have, also in expanding programs as we look to add those programs that I referenced a little bit earlier. Most importantly, I wanted to take some time to talk about moving South Fulton forward, specifically as it relates to parks and recreation. Key in where we've been over the last year is the very successful Parks and Recreation departmental transition. I want to thank the city manager for his leadership in that regard, but also all the other departments, IT and others, HR, which have simply really been central in helping us to transition. There have always been some loose ends that we've had to tie up, but it's gone extremely well. We've been able to move everyone over without any disruption of services to our residents, and that was a key goal for us. Next, as we look at moving South Fulton forward, is the installation of Civic Rec and its implementation. This is just a huge step in the right direction for us. First and foremost, it gives us better fiscal responsibility, and we are already seeing increased revenues, and we expect that to continue to grow. For July and June of this year, we collected $84,124.37. That's a nearly $20,000 increase over the same period last year. So we're already seeing increased revenues, and we believe as we move forward that we'll continue to see that grow. It also provides online access for our residents, enhanced access to information and programs. We can track our data much more effectively, and it complies with the Parks Ordinance as passed by this council. I mentioned earlier the STEM-based programming and how key that is. It is really going to help us to connect to what I know is a core concern for many of our families in this community. It's going to help us to be able to provide some support that has not been there previously and that we think can make a significant impact. We hope that it leads to a better dialogue between us and Fulton County Schools, hoping that we can craft a positive partnership where possible to help support students and families. And lastly, I mentioned earlier our parks master plan. All first-class reputable agencies have master plans. It's essentially, as you probably are already aware, a roadmap that helps us guide and inform our future decisions around parks and our park system. It addresses both current and future needs across our entire city in all districts. It's collaborative. It's very important that we talk to our residents district by district. We have a very diverse city. The needs in one area are different from another. This process will allow us to hear directly from residents and you as our city leaders as we build a roadmap for the future. It looks at where we are today, where we'd like to go, and most importantly, how do we get there. It's collaborative in nature, as I mentioned. It impacts across a number of areas, not just parks. It impacts our city in a social way, environmental, health outcomes, and economic development. And lastly, it will open the door for something I'd like for us to pursue as soon as we are able to do so, which is agency accreditation. The National Recreation and Parks Association does agency accreditation through the Commission for Accreditation in Parks Agencies. There are 151 standards that they measure parks agencies by. I think it's important that at the appropriate time we engage that process. It may be FY20 before we're positioned to do so, but being able to be accredited opens the doors for a lot of other opportunities, be they grants, partnerships. So having a master plan and agency accreditation, I think, is a positive step in the right direction. This budget is a budget that will allow us to begin this year on a very positive note. We're going to move forward aggressively to make sure that we implement the things included in this budget and to make an impactful difference in FY 2019. And with that, I will take your questions.
Okay, colleagues, Mr. Pettit, who wants to say something? Mr. Gerald? So, bearing that in mind, everybody wants to say something. Let's start off with Ms. Gilyard, then we'll go to Ms. Rao, and then Ms. Willis.
That order wrong. Is Gilyard and Ms.
But
Rose?
all y'all get it. I can't, I said,
It's the order you decide, Mayor. We
Yeah.
decided to let you.
everybody,
that's
I didn't see everybody,
retreat.
so it's Gilyard, Rao, and then Willis.
I'll let Rosie go before me, because she did have a hand up.
Just give me a
If
moment.
it's okay, if it's okay, if it's okay.
My position, it doesn't matter, because pretty y'all got something to say. So, I mean, I saw Gilyard, Rao, and Willis. When I looked down this way, everybody, that's what I saw.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Ms. Gilyard.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. It was a good presentation.
Thank you.
And I know that you really invested. But I just wanted to, my questions are budget related. I have them on my phone. I couldn't print it out. My printer wasn't working today. So they're on my phone, so just bear with me.
Yes, ma'am.
I looked at last year's, everybody's budget from last year, and there was something in your budget that got my attention
Okay.
that I noticed that wasn't in any of the budgets, I don't think. And that was performance indicators, because that's going to be how you measure whatever you say it is that you're going to do for the year. So I'm hoping at some point in time that we as the council will get those so we will understand how you're measuring yourself, so we can, it gives us some information. So,
Yes, ma'am.
the personnel budget,
Mhm.
this year you had 73 positions. Next year you'll have 51. Now I see that some were transferred to other departments. But there were some instances where I really couldn't tell how many. So there's a reduction really in your salary line because of that.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm not sure what that is or isn't.
So it is a reduction on paper, but not in service. We are moving to a shared services model where the employees that currently are in our Parks Maintenance Division will become part of General Services. They'll still continue to maintain the 17 parks and nearly 700 acres that we currently maintain, as well as being able to add value in some other areas. So what on paper looks like a reduction is actually a shared services model that we believe will allow us to be able to reach additional areas in the city that currently are not receiving services.
So are they transferred to Public Works?
General Services, yes, ma'am.
So that's that. So, and then the fringe benefits went down as well because you got less people.
Yes, ma'am.
So you had some savings.
Yes.
That was what I wanted to point out. So in operating, I look at the 250 budgeted for professional fees and wonder, is part or all of that for the master plan that you are considering, and whether or not you will seek a company or an organization that has experience preparing master plans for parks?
It's a very insightful question, and yes is the answer. In fact, I met with Mr. Anthony Kirk earlier today. It's our second meeting recently to specifically talk about a bid process for a Parks Master Plan consultant. We expect that to be coming forward in the very near future. So yes, we will seek professional assistance in developing that Parks Master Plan. And so a portion of that professional services line is earmarked to ensure that we're able to partner with a professional agency that has done that type of master planning previously.
What about hospitality? You put on events at times?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And so that helps us with the community cultural events that we hope to do. Everything from fall festivals to Easter egg hunts to a number of other events that we do that we think creates a sense of community for us.
Okay, so I only have 2 more.
Yes, sir.
So I'll be real quick. And capital. And the 18,000 allocated to Cedar Grove Park. I don't think that it's going to be able to cover the landscaping, which is awful. The lighting that's needed. We have a field there, and I didn't really ever pay attention to the condition of the field until we did an economic development tour and drove to the park. And someone in the van said, this is an excellent place for an athletic field to be. And it's not being used, it's underutilized.
Yes,
So I want you to really take a look at that and see what you can do with it. I think there's a lot of potential there. In Wilkerson Mill Park, I didn't see anything for Wilkerson Mill Park, but I have asked for feedback, so I'm expecting to get some feedback from Wilkerson Mill Park subdivision to let me know whether or not there's anything they need. And the last thing is the organization chart. So in the chart, I see a lot of the parks, and some I don't see, such as Delano, Old National, Trammell Crowe, Cedar Grove, and Wilkerson Mill. So I'm wondering if those are passive parks, and the ones that are listed are active, or why are they not listed with the others?
The ones that are listed have facilities where we house staff.
Okay.
And so that's the difference. And so the other parks all receive services, but they don't necessarily have recreation centers or community buildings. And so the ones you see listed are the ones where we will have staff going on a daily basis. I'm really excited about the fact that about 2 weeks ago we added staff to Creel Park for the first time in over 10 years. And so there's now a staff person there on a daily basis. And so we're looking to grow. So that's the distinction that you see there, is those are the facilities where we have staff currently in facilities as required, by the way, by the Parks Ordinance.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Gilyard. Ms. Rob?
Yes.
I have a couple questions, and so I'll lay them out, and if you could touch on as many as you could, that would be helpful. This is kind of consistent with something that Ms. Gilyard mentioned. I know in the detailed budget, not necessarily in this presentation, there was reference to the hard courts, and it really only made reference to the Tender Center, no reference to Trammell Crowe. And so wanted to understand that, and you addressed that. And one of the things I'd like us to look at is AED defibrillators in our recreational facilities, and as well as hydration stations at our parks. As you well know, we've had incidents and fatalities in parks with our young people, and we need to make sure that they're hydrated all the time. So I think that's such a small investment that we need to look at to improve, and that's something that really should be in any park that has active programming. And one of the things that I wanted to look at is based on the ordinance we passed, my understanding is, as it relates to Sandtown Athletics Association, you know, their registration process was kind of rigorous already. They were already online and doing all those things, and they have roughly about 14 years worth of data, I understand, in that system. So one of the things I want to ask the city manager to look at is provide some support to get that data extracted from that system, because it's not a simple thing, but as you can imagine, with 14 years worth of data. Particularly, they have data that I think we would want to, you know, have access to, because they've been doing really all the recruitment from the park programming standpoint. So whatever support our IT department can lend with getting that data out so it can go into the new system, I would look for us to support that.
Thank you. In reference to all three of those very valid points, Our capital improvement plan over 5 years includes about $544,000 for our court resurfacing. So as we progress through that 5-year plan, we'll certainly be looking at the locations that are in need of resurfacing. Trammell Crow would certainly be a consideration in that regard. And so we've not planned out all of the hard court resurfacing, but there's over $500,000 there. So we think we can do an effective job of spreading that across all of our courts and make sure that we touch residents across the city. It's a very helpful suggestion as it relates to AEDs. We do have them in our physical facilities right now, but looking at how we can station them in outdoor areas, weatherproof those, and be able to have those available on fields is certainly a worthy consideration. We'll certainly be looking at, as well as your suggestion around hydration. We try to encourage that, having been through what we've been through in the last few years. We do hydration certification with all of our volunteer coaches. It's a constant emphasis for us, but understanding how we can maybe look at low cost and effective ways of providing hydration stations is something that we'll certainly take into consideration. And lastly, as it relates to the data for athletic associations, we've already entered into a dialogue with Mr. Strickland around that. There is some cost associated with that, and so we're working our way through a plan, but we've engaged in active dialogue. We think it's a way to make that happen with some cost associated, but we definitely want to make sure, because that data is important for us to be able to do what we'd like to do in Parks and Recreation, and also for the association who spent a lot of time and effort collecting that data over the last 14 years. And so we want to make sure that everybody's able to make use of that as we move forward.
We have Ms. Willis, Ms. Jackson, and Ms. Gunn.
I want to have a discussion around the maintenance fees because I see a lot of expenses and a lot of park demands, but I don't see enough revenue coming in, and I feel like there's a lot of missed revenue opportunity. So as far as the maintenance fees that we're supposed to be collecting, not only from the youth athletic associations, but are we collecting maintenance fees for any program that comes into that uses our facility?
We are. As I mentioned earlier, in the first 2 months of our transition, we saw a significant spike in increase in our revenues, largely due to implementation of Civic Rec. All of our revenue now flows through Civic Rec. That didn't work effectively under our old system with the county. So we're already seeing increased revenues, and we expect that to continue and grow. Everything from karate to Zumba to the athletic associations to the tennis center, it all flows through Civic Rec, and we're already seeing increases. There's always an opportunity to make more of an effort around revenue and identifying opportunities, and we're certainly looking for that, but we're already beginning to see significant increases in that area.
So what is the resolve around the youth athletic associations? Because it's my understanding they are not in Civic Rec because of transition issues and not understanding and not being rolled out properly. And can you answer who came up with Civic Rec? Because I was told that the council went out and seeked Civic Rec, and I don't know what Civic Rec is. So who came up with Civic Rec?
So that decision on the part of the city was done, I believe, late last year under our then interim city manager. Civic Rec and Civic Plus, which is the city's website generator, are affiliated. And so I think it came out of that discussion. I was aware that the city was moving in that direction, but I wasn't directly involved in the decision to go with Civic Rec versus some other software.
Okay. But our youth athletic associations, most of them are not registered as Civic Rec, to my understanding. So how are we getting those maintenance fees with them not being in Civic Rec?
So yes, they are in Civic Rec. You can go online today and register for Welcome All Football in Civic Rec, Sandtown Football in Civic Rec. There have been some transitional issues that we've been working with the associations on, in discussions with our city leadership about, and there's a plan for us to do a work session presentation specifically around youth athletic associations, maintenance fees, and data, I believe at the September 11th meeting. And so we'll have an in-depth conversation. But to answer your question, yes, they are in Civic Rec, with the exception of Old National, who we're working with. They're a little behind the curve at Old National in terms of data and IT. They've always registered a bit more in a paper system. So we're moving them into there. But our goal is to have every single child in Civic Rec. And so we'll talk in more detail about that on the 11th. But to answer your question, yes, they're in Civic Rec now. You can go on the application right now and you'll see Welcome All Football.
So we have over 200 kids right now in Civic Rec at Welcome All, and we have accounted for the maintenance fees. Is that what you're saying?
We have not collected all the maintenance fees. We have collected revenue from those associations, and the plan that we are negotiating with both the associations and will present to the council on the 11th will specifically address that question.
Okay, so you have not collected the maintenance fees?
I have collected a check from some associations, but not all.
Okay, so if you will have a report on that on the 11th?
Yes, ma'am, in detail.
Okay. Permit process. I would like to see stronger controls around the permit process. Here's what I'm experiencing. When people have events at Welcome All Park, oftentimes their events are shut down because they don't have proper permitting. So is there any way that your staff can look to see who has permits prior to a weekend event and contact individuals who have requested the permit or who've been issued permit and ensure that the information that's on the permit application is accurate and they have a full understanding of what they were permitted to have. For example, if someone has put in an application for a permit for a family reunion and they have an application they're going to have 25 people, then and they don't have a permit for amplified music, can your staff start verifying these permits? Because what's happening is when the park rules are enforced, what they're doing is calling the mayor, they're calling me, they're calling everybody else to try to rectify the problem. And I think that these are problems that can be resolved on the front end if someone, through their due diligence, and put a process in place to make sure they're following up with people on these permits. And also permits for special events.
So let me touch on both of those. We, every Thursday, issue what is called a rental report that goes to the command staff of the police department as well as all the impacted departments that lists every permit issued for that upcoming weekend. So that officers have that access to that information, and it lists everyone who has applied for a permit or who has rented a picnic pavilion in one of our parks. It also lists whether or not they have a speaker permit, because not every rental does. And so all that information is issued every Thursday. As it relates to applying for permits, when you go on Civic Rec, and if you reserve and pay for a pavilion, it automatically prints out your permit. Mm-hmm. In addition, the park's ordinances are also listed so that you are aware as a citizen of what the park ordinances are, what is permissible, and what is not. As it relates to special events, we do the same process. When someone calls and requests an application, they don't just get the application, they actually get the application and the ordinance. So from the very outset of our interaction with them, we want them to know what the ground rules are and how the process works. We are working with our current park patrols, which will hopefully transition with the approval of this budget to the one I mentioned earlier, to ensure that they're aware of what's permitted and that they know how to address whatever is going on in the park for that particular weekend. It is always possible for someone to tell us they're having an event with 25 people, and then it turns into an event with 200. And so we manage that on a case-by-case, day-by-day basis to try to make sure that the information that we have been, that has been submitted for a park permit is in fact what actually happens in the park. So we have to manage that, and that's an ongoing process. Also, we have a lot of instances where people show up spontaneously. And in the age of social media and digital everything, oftentimes what starts out as a couple of people on whatever they're on, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, can quickly turn into a large number of folks spontaneously showing up at a park. We want to do a better job working with our communication department to make sure that people understand up front what to do when you'd like to have a permit for a special event. There's a process way to do that, and it's in our ordinance. What we endeavor to do is follow what the ordinance says. And so oftentimes that may inconvenience some people who aren't used to following the process, but we're trying to be as diligent as we can about following what this council has passed in the Parks Ordinance. It lays out special events.
And I understand what you're saying about, I understand those. What I'm asking, what I don't hear from you, and what's missing from what I'm asking of you and your staff to do, is when people put in permit applications, I would like to see someone from your staff deliver stellar customer service, call these individuals, make sure they understand what the permit is permitting them to do, and make sure they have a full understanding They're permitted to have music, they're permitted not to have music, they're permitted to have a crowd between 24 to 25. If they go over that, then public safety, has the right to shut them down. That's what I'm asking. Because what is happening is that in some instances, people are saying they're not understanding, or they think they have a certain permit to do certain things, and they do not. So I understand it's the onus is on people to read a whole bunch of rules. I'm asking for you to implement in your policy to follow up with these individuals to make sure they have a full understanding.
That is a very good suggestion. We speak with the vast majority of people that come through the system now. Civic Rec is an online system, so not everyone interacts with the staff. We can revisit that and determine how we can maybe proactively do that. As it relates to special events, we have extensive discussions with anyone who applies for a special event application. It's an ongoing dialogue that involves police, fire, the health department, and so we're engaged in those discussions very actively. As it relates to a picnic pavilion, currently the online system does allow people to register from home to do that, but it does provide them with a copy of the ordinance. As it goes forward right now, we do end up talking with a significant percentage of those folks, and I'll certainly revisit how we can maybe revise our process, giving our staffing resources to see if we can proactively call everyone. There is a significant volume of people that register in Civic Rec, and we'll certainly take that under consideration.
But there's not a significant volume of people who are asking for permits. Because when I often ask you who has permits, a lot of times you tell me there's no permit. So if the traffic is that low, then I think that we can try to make a call to the people who are going through the process to make sure they understand what they're permitted to do.
Certainly.
All right. Concessions. We're missing a huge revenue opportunity in concessions. What can we do to get our concessions up and running?
So I've had some direction from our city manager on that, and as I mentioned, I met with Mr. Clerk earlier today, in fact, where we specifically talked about a bid process for a citywide concession service. So that is in process as we speak. The end result of that, once we're able to issue a bid and get respondents, was that we are looking to put in place a concessions option citywide, so that we'll have one vendor approved by the council that provides concessions across all of our athletic fields. We have an option inside of Welcome All Park for a juice bar, and to look at other ways of utilizing that vendor, be it that concessionaire, be it processing vendor applications for special events. And so all of that is being looked at as we craft the scope of work for that bid process, but that is an ongoing dialogue that we've already started.
So what are we going to do for football season? Are we going to have a report in September?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. That is one of the key elements of what we'll discuss in our work session on the 11th. Concessions, the registration and maintenance fees you mentioned earlier, as well as a resolution to data. And so all three of those will be primary discussions as part of that presentation on September 11th.
And lastly, communication for community events. Can I see some improvement in that area? And I'm going to give you a specific example. There was a V103 event held at Welcome All Park. And there were some staff members who reached out to me the day of and asked me to come down. Luckily, I wasn't around and I could, make that accommodation in my schedule. But when our parks and recreation are having events in our city, is it possible for the flyers not to just be placed on the website, but it be sent to the elected body so that specifically if something is happening in our area, we can make sure we have a presence? Or if we know in a timely enough fashion, what I like to do is sometimes partner with Parks and Recreation on events, and it helps your budget when I can go out and get donors that will be willing to help with some of the events that you're planning in the area. So if you could give us a schedule of what you all have laid out for the year, let us know timely when you're having these events, and so we won't find out about it at the last minute.
That's an excellent suggestion, Councilwoman Willis, and we're moving in that direction even now. Under the leadership of our new communication director, Ms. Butts Freeman, we've already communicated all of our events for the rest of the year. We'll be working with her. I'm excited. I've worked with Joanne in the past to be able to craft a communications plan specifically for our department, so that we'll have a plan and a process for how we communicate Clearly, we want all of our elected officials to be fully aware of what we're doing and know what those opportunities are. I expect to see significant improvement by working with Ms. Bus Freeman moving forward, and that process is already underway.
Okay, we'll have Ms. Jackson, Ms. Gums, the lead, and I'll close it out. Nice. All right, Mr. Baker will close it out.
Okay, I was amazed when we toured the South Fulton Tennis Center. And just a question, we're currently contracting it out, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you might have discussed part of this. But do you know approximately how much? Because when I saw that center, I was floored. How much do we get from that?
It is an 80-20 revenue split.
Who gets the 80?
The operating is the 80, the city is the 20 currently. That is also an opportunity that we're looking forward to working with Mr. Kerr to revisit. But I can give you specific numbers because all that revenue now is in Civic Rec. I don't have that report in front of me, but I can certainly have it for you by tomorrow and let you know exactly how much revenue is coming to that center since it's been here since May 28th. But all of the registrations at the tennis center, every last single one of them go through Civic Rec. That was not the case before May 28th. It was a very different process, but now they register in the city's system. We take all the revenue in, and then we dispense revenue back out to the operator.
I've been, and actually they're in Mr. Camus' district, but I have just been targeted by several constituents at the fact and talking about the cost that is, that they're being charged and how much money and revenue that is bringing in at the one by Burdette, as well as this tennis court. So if it's that type of money, city manager, I'm trying to find out what can we do because that can help us defray some of these costs as far as repairing the tennis courts and that type of thing. If it's that type of money, to my understanding, I don't know what's coming in. That's what I'm trying to find out.
Yes, ma'am.
But apparently it's a significant amount of money.
Significant, I'll provide you the report so you can see what the numbers are for yourself. What I can tell you is that all of that revenue as of May 28th is now coming through the city first. And so we can give you a very detailed report on specifically how much money is generated at the Burdette Tennis Center as well as the South Fulton Tennis
So
Center.
do you understand what I'm saying? It can defray some of these costs that we're talking about as far as repairing, because in 7 to 10 years, we're gonna have to repair that tennis court again. So if that income was coming to us, we're not in business to make money. So if we had employees there, we're still gonna have monies left to do the upkeep of what we need.
Well, as you may have heard me reference a little earlier, it is my belief that there's even more revenue potential than what we currently realize at the South Fulton Tennis Center and Burdette. It's one of the reasons we propose to make some investments in rebuilding some of those courts, because we think a potential those facilities can increase even beyond where it is today. And so that's our goal, is to make sure that we're getting as much out of those facilities so we can put as much as we can back into them for our residents and families. So it's a very good point that you made, Councilwoman Jackson. I agree with you, and we're looking to grow that as we move forward in the future.
So we're still on contract with them?
Pardon me? Are we still?
Councilman, I think what he's saying is we are currently reviewing all of those agreements. We do have a current contract, and for the first time, we actually know how much revenue is coming in, what the total 100% is. The challenge is that the current agreement that we have, while we are receiving all of the funding, we're pushing out 80% of it. We would like to do something, I mean, we should just be honest, we want to do something different so that we have a greater portion of that. I think Mr. Phillips is trying to be politically correct, because he's saying, look, we've got a contract with these folks.
How long is
this
the
is the
contract?
split. And so I think we're looking into not only how long the contract is, what our options are within it, and to receive more revenue. And so while we don't have the dollar amount of any of that stuff handy today, tomorrow before close of business, we'll forward that information to the entire council, so everybody will have it.
All right.
So,
Jackson, you finished?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
so Director Phillips, thank you for enduring this marathon of questions, but I have some more. you mentioned about 8 park rangers. And just for the public's information, how many parks do we have in South Fulton?
We have 17 parks and approximately 692 acres. About half of that is developed.
Okay. So my first question is, I know you mentioned Chief Mills, but do you have any idea how you will determine priority for those 8 rangers, or will they rotate around parks?
It will clearly connect to peak hours and times. We know based on experience when recreation centers are busy. We are in a seasonal business in Parks and Recreation. It depends on the time of the year, what's going on. So we can track some of that. Civic Rec will help us to define that even further. But in addition to being able to define when people are in our parks and when we need security, we'll lean on the expertise of the police department in terms of what best practices are. And so that's why that conversation with Chief Meadows is so important, so that his insights around how best to deploy those, I can provide information around when is it busy at this park versus that park, and then partnering with him so that he can give that law enforcement insight to say, okay, if that's when you're having peak times, here's how you should deploy those 8 officers to get the best effect.
So with that being said, is it necessary for 8 full-time, or is that something that you all are still discussing? And will the recruitment come out of, I'm assuming, Chief Meadows' office?
That's an ongoing dialogue, and the city manager has charged me and Chief Meadows with figuring out how best to do that. So I don't have a definitive answer for you. What I can tell you is I want Chief Meadows to lead the law enforcement part of this, because these are in fact police officers. So I defer to his expertise in terms of training and how we need to source those folks, and they'll have some accountability to our police department, so we're figuring that as we go. 8 officers gives us 2.5 times the coverage we have today, and I don't believe that the coverage we have today is adequate. It gives us Saturday and Sundays, but I have 300 children practicing football in the park on any given evening during the week. And so I need to be able to address those security concerns as well. We've had security challenges. We know what those are. So I think 8 is a good step in the right direction. And as we move forward and see how that deploys working with the police department, we can determine, is that adequate, or do I need to go back to the city manager and ask for more?
So just so I'm clear, these will possibly be off-duty City of South Fulton police officers?
No, ma'am. These are new positions.
Okay.
That working with the
We're not paying time and a half.
We actually want to make sure that we bring the 8 new police officers on, and we want to try to train them with school resource officer principles, so that we kind of create that wraparound feel with the officers. And we also want to have a softer uniform for them also that's more environmentally friendly. I don't mean biodegradable, but that it blends into the park environment. So that, along with when we look at the Parks and Recreation's goals for the year, we certainly want to see our resource officers, well, I'm saying resource officers, but park rangers supporting those goals as well, in terms of helping out with a lot of the programming and things of that nature. And so they're going to have a multifaceted approach to that, and also how we expect them to patrol the various parks also. You want to have electric vehicles in some of the parks, and I believe I had a conversation with Councilwoman Rao about the development of some of the walking trails and how those will be patrolled, and how do we develop those responsibly, and how do we patrol those as well. So there's a lot that we can do with it, and I even envision down the road maybe a PAL program coming out of that, where the school resource officers help, park rangers help to support that.
Okay, well, thank you for that, and I'm really excited about that partnership. I told you it was a marathon. And part of me not having a budget book in front of me, but mention of purchasing 15 vans, did you say?
15 passenger vans,
15.
5 of them over the next 5 years, 1 each year.
1 each year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so for fiscal 2019, how much is that?
$36,125 per state contract, and we will endeavor, with council approval, of course, in future budgets, to spread that across a 5-year capital improvement, so that by the end of those 5 years, we will have replaced all of our existing vans.
And maintenance for the existing fleet, how much?
So there is maintenance in our operating budget now for the existing fleet. So we do everything, a lot of the basic maintenance, oil changes, things of that nature, our staff manages in our facility on Stonewater Road, but we do have a funding line in our budget that covers some of that maintenance as well.
Okay. I think I can save the rest of it. Oh, Cliftondale Park. So we also need, the baseball field, because when it rains, it is the high So I'm just encouraging you to, I guess, put some wraparound or something that you can help upgrade that area. I mean, that's a big priority, because even though it's small, a lot of people still use it, but that park floods and it's a
Yeah.
mess.
So there's some leveling that needs to be done there, and I think we may be able to look at doing that in FY 2019 out of our operating budget. It is, like all of our parks, a wonderful resource in that community, so we recognize that. So I'd certainly take your suggestion very seriously, and we'll see what we can do to improve Clifton. Yeah, we did replace the water line this year into the building, which was a big step in the right direction, and we're looking to see how else we can make an impact.
All right, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Khalid?
And then myself. Then Mr. Big.
All right, gonna run through a couple things. Our road went to Kathleen Mitchell. That's awesome. Special events permits, I've been around when you had to get one of those out. I saw the grilling that our new police chief and multiple departments, fire department gave Mr. Thomason for Old Nat Day. You'll probably hear him talk about that tonight. But I am also not a fan. I'm not a fan of either Civics Rec or Civics Plus. You know, I do websites. I don't think they're that impressive. I don't know if we got them at a really good price, or they're giving us the basic package. But I would love for us to look at that before we get too far down the road. Now I'm going to put on my Naima hat, my Councilwoman Gilyard hat. I too was going through the budget, and last year Fulton County had $100,000 for lights. $60,000 of it went to Mall Park. $40,000 of it was going to come to Creel Park, and that $40,000 is missing. What is the deal with that?
So that dates back to 2016, and the county's budget in 2016 was $100,000 to your point. We began working with our IT department, which is the county department charged with camera systems and security, because they were trying to sync them with police infrastructure as well. It took well over 18 months to get the system in Welcome Hall up and running. So we were well into 2017 before that system was fully operational. And so by the time we got to that juncture, we were into cityhood and transition. We were in the city of South Fulton. The department had not transitioned yet, but those processes were moving forward. I cannot speak specifically as to how the county may have allotted that remaining $40,000. There were certain things that were required to be done by the county before we transitioned, one of those being the light improvement and replacement at Old National Park. I don't know if some of those projects may have tapped into some of that funding, that how the county decided to pay for some of the projects.
Let me just stop you right there, because I got a lot more questions. Now I'm going to put on my Councilwoman Jackson hat and say, I want my lights. So I would like Mr. City Treasurer / CFO, if we could find out what happened specifically to that $40,000. There may be some other monies that we need to look for, and I'll let you direct that search, but yeah.
And Councilman, there is money in the proposed budget specific for that purpose.
Then I was going through the budget again. Of course, I was looking for the Creel Park staff, and I'm going to skip my methodology and just say, it appears to me, Councilwoman Gilyard noticed that the employment line had been reduced. Councilwoman Jackson noticed that the maintenance was outsourced. It looks like all of the maintenance is gone. And I heard you talk about shared services. So the entire maintenance department has gone to our new facilities person?
Public Works in general.
And
So Public Works Department, Public Works, General Services, all of those activities, instead of you having 12 folks who work a combination in full and part-time, you would move all of them under Public Works, and instead of servicing a small amount of parks, you would have that for the city. I think one of the things that we've highlighted for council before is that although we transition certain departments and services, we have not transitioned infrastructure related to supporting everything from maintenance to cleanup to any of the general activities related to facilities and fleet. And so that has been a humongous deficit in us being able to maintain facilities. And so leveraging shared services allows us to take the talent that we have and some of the resources we have and spread it out for the good of the city. And so it would not just be those particular folks, though. I mean, they have been only working in part so far. We also, when you look in the budget under the facilities section, you'll also see, I believe there are 3 or 4 positions that would actually, quote unquote, fix things. So when your AC goes out, instead of having to just replace it or having maintenance elsewhere, they'd be able to provide, let's say, AC maintenance. Now, if it has to be replaced, it has to be replaced.
Because I don't want to go too long on that.
Yeah.
I see that Public Works is next.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that, but I will say, I'm very interested in seeing that budget because my constituents don't feel like the parks are kept well now. Like, especially when we have an event on a Friday or Saturday, and the trash cans are overflowing. My seniors that get out and walk at like 6 in the morning, you know, they see all of that. I know that we don't do 24-hour maintenance, and so I'm just, when we start spreading things around, I just want to see how that works out. But I want to move on.
Well, I would say it's important not to just look at the numbers. Remember, we've also added 2, I guess, non-cost assist as well. So your South Fulton Clean Team that actually has a 2-day-a-week schedule that is after those days, that's another. So there are a variety of activities that not only support the park, but support those deficiencies that you pointed out. And so definitely look at the budget, but also don't forget those add-ons that we have added, like the clean teams, like the
green team.
Green team, I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely. So, but those types of activities are all in support of the same piece, even though it may look like a reduction, it's actually adding additional resources across the city.
All right, so we're going to come back to that. I'll say this last thing. I too have heard complaints about I'm actually going to say complaints about our athletic. I've heard complaints by our athletic associations, but I've also heard complaints about our athletic associations. The one program I never hear complaints about is the basketball program, which is an in-house program. And so I think that we have a conversation coming in our strategic planning about where are we headed with these associations. Are we going to bring everybody in-house? Or are we going to outsource everything? Because this half-in, half-out thing seems to be more trouble than it's worth. Do you want to say something about that?
I think our basketball program is very well run. It is run by paid City of South Fulton Parks and Recreation employees, and that provides the opportunity for us to do things in a specific way. I think there are more than one path to success, and with the leadership of our city manager and the council, there's more than one way to create success. I think our goal is whatever policy that this council decides, we're going to make it work.
Okay, I would like to see us, I think the half in, half out thing is problematic, and I would like to see us talk about that at some point. I will say, when we do go that route, and I want to talk specifically about Old National, we just got some stats about our city, right? And so our per capita income is $28,000. That doesn't sound like a lot of money. People think that that's low. That sounds about right for Old National. I know that World Changers has an athletic association. The church they got athletic association, and most of the kids that used to go to Burdette now go to that program because it's free. And so we just need to look at how as we are standardizing services, I want to make sure that we don't price out the neediest kids amongst us, because we clearly have many kids in Title I schools, and if you can't afford a school lunch, then I can't have you paying $200 for a cheerleading program.
I think you make a valid point, and I think we have a very diverse city, and we have an obligation to meet the needs of all of our residents and all of our constituents, so that is a healthy conversation to have. Figure out how best to approach that moving forward. For what it's worth, we are in dialogue with Pastor Anthony Adams, who is the youth pastor at World Changers. Thank you, Councilwoman Jackson, for kind of setting up that conversation for me. So we're looking to partner as well. And there are other opportunities around grants and different things I think we can do to address that specific need. Our obligation is to all youth. And so we're going to do the best we can with the resources we have to meet that obligation.
And lastly, I would say that Park Rangers program is so dope. I just think it's amazing. That is the kind of city that I want to live in. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay. I know that we got a long way to go, so you don't even have to respond to my questions. I want you to, I'm just gonna put it on your mind, okay?
Yes, sir.
Contractors. Who's open? Are the contracts still good? Was the contract voided when we became a city? All right? I'm asking. I'm asking. I want you may want to go to our county attorney, but I just need to know that since we became a city, all those contracts are out.
Yes.
All right?
We're working with Ms. Walker.
Okay, well, my apprentice is Walker, they're not, so I don't know. I just want to make sure. And if they're not, I don't know why we haven't made it happen to make them. New signs with park rules. Somebody told me to make sure I say that, and I agree because you can hardly read the ones we got. All right? On the vehicles, are you anticipating lease or are you anticipating purchasing these?
The budget anticipates purchase. We'll work with our city manager and our CFO to determine what is the best fiscal position for the city. So we have not delved deeply into that. There is funding there for purchase, but it is a decision of the
Mr. Manager, yes, sir. I think we need to look at that because we had that conversation with police and fire. That we probably need to look at it for this too.
Just real quick, man, for your one question, so that we don't have to give you something in writing. We assumed certain contracts that were existing so that there was no gap in services. Some of those contracts, we assumed them for the certain period of time, which is basically the first fiscal year. So I believe that our parks director and our city attorney are looking at all of those contracts. I think that's why we mentioned earlier, I think when Ms. Jackson asked that we have these things in place now, and that's so people wouldn't go to the parks and not be able to access services. But now that we are moving past transition, we'll be reevaluating all of them. And they're currently working together to do that.
I do go along with the issue of centralized maintenance. Because I can tell you right now, you do not want public works cutting your grass. You don't want to do that. You want parks cutting your grass. I found that out when we had the amphitheater. We had public cutting the grass and grass was everywhere. But when parks came and took over that deal, they edged the grass and they did it. So I just wanted to know, centralized and this stuff is good. All right. Maybe, and we talk about lighting. Yes. Maybe we should consider a one vendor as we go around in terms of lighting that meets all the smart growth, principles and smart city principles. That maybe we need to look at one vendor in terms of doing that. All right. Ms. Jackson, you talked about the software, the tennis center. We haven't even reached the potential of that place. When I was commissioner, I put over $600,000 in the renovation of that place. And one of the things that we were supposed to have done, Ms. Jackson, was that we were supposed to be able to rent that place out because it could be, it's nice. We were to rent that place out for events. We have never done that. And simply because there is no scale for rental fees to get it done. A simple thing that we should have done years ago and could have provided extra revenue for us in terms of renting that facility, all right? The other thing, I got a couple of things, mine just come, don't expound on. Everywhere I go in this country, and I go to parks, one thing that kind of goes everywhere is the use of color. Use of color. Our parks are drab. So as we go by and we look at, when we look at facilities for the kids, the monkey bars and whatever like that. We look for durability, but we look for color. And if you ever go to Broward County and go by parks, you'll know what I mean. The other thing is association responsibility. If we're going to continue to have this notion, and which we probably will, especially in football, if we're going to continue to have this notion that the association is going to provide these services for us, we need to hold these associations to the contract. That has been happening. I remember one time, association said, "We ain't painting stripes on the field." Well, read the contract, and you were supposed to paint the stripes, not me. All right, and we got to make sure that they understand that contract, and we hold them to that contract, because if we don't, they'll start doing crazy. All right. I also think that in most parks around the country too, we need to start thinking about having some exercise equipment in parks that are good, commercial grade, especially for our seniors.
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing to go on the other side of the spectrum, we also need to have computers for our children. So exercise equipment for our seniors and those who, like Chief Meadows, he not call himself a senior, but he may want to go and exercise. but seniors, and then the other thing is a place for children to come after school. They don't always have to be the library. They could come to our parks. Civic rep, Mr. Clee, I'm just gonna say this. The revenue went up. Now, I'm gonna say that one of the reasons why that happened is because of civic rep. Because we became more control over the money by having to get the data. However, the problem that we have there is a loophole. And that loophole is, I'll give you the classic one, is the tennis center. There's nobody there usually, sometimes, but on Saturday. So we're holding tournaments on Saturday, but there's not a Fulton County employee there. I'm sorry. I've only been gone like 4 years. But there's not a South City or South Fulton employee there. So where's the accountability for what's going on out there? See what I'm saying? If our parks going to be open on the weekend and there's money being distributed,
Thank you.
we need to have a county employee out there.
One of our people.
One of our people out there with that. Lastly, I got a suggestion about this permitting thing. Just imagine what would happen if you give a permit, a requirement should be that permit should be displayed. Tacked to the pavilion, or give them a stick and some nails. And when they use that park, stick it. Mr. Baker, you know what I'm saying? Stick it in the ground. So when we used to do this with zoning years ago, stick it in the ground. So when his police officer come in there, he knows exactly. But you got to make it so they can't cheat now. All right. She knows exactly what's supposed to go on and what's not supposed to be going on in that pavilion or in another portion of the park. So I think if we just post the doggone permit, and Mr. Manager,
Or put it in an app.
We could actually do that.
or put it in an app. I don't know about app.
Yeah.
Anyway, but let me say this to you, because one thing I'm getting a little concerned with right now is, and it happened at the field over there on Butler Road a couple of weeks ago. Ranch field, whatever. Listen, if a police officer goes over to somebody and they're doing something and they ask them, do you have a permit? They should be readily available and hand that permit to that police officer. And police have to be able, we're trying to figure out if they got a permit or not. If you ain't got it, you don't have it. All right? So I would say to you that that's what we need to do in all of our permitting, Mr. Manager. If police goes in, chief, and you ain't got it, I'm assuming that you're illegal and you got to shut it down. So I just want to add, you ain't got to respond, I just want to add those things to your mind as we go forward. All right, Mr. Baker, you got it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so,
Best thing about going last is everybody said most of the things you want to touch. Resurfacing STEM projects, amazing idea. I appreciate that idea, as well as the ranges. The mayor touched the point about the amplification of that tennis center. That was the main thing. I wanted to know, what are we doing to amplify it? Because when we took the tour, me and Khalid were with you, we said that this is an area that could be rented out. Like we mentioned that, and we stepped away from it, not knowing that there's nothing that's being done to amplify it. Also, I wanted to ask you about the light post in the Old National Park that was leaning when we took our tour. Have we taken any steps to correct it?
The contractor has been out to look at what needs to be done to straighten that light pole up. Just before transition, it was about $261,000. I think you and I made a discussion at the time, invested in all of the lights there. So we took the contractor back out, and there is a process in place. They're looking to try to correct that as we speak.
Okay, because that could be a safety hazard, and it could get real bad. So we really need to kind of put some pressure on that. And lastly, it's been, what's the name of the park in District 7?
There is none.
I know it's not. And we had this discussion about a year ago, and it's like, I know we're new, I know we're starting out, but skill or will, this is something that I'm going to put myself in front of. So after September 11th, I would like to take a ride with you to identify land that we own in the city, in that district, if that's possible.
Certainly, we can do that, and I think I already may have some information about, well, let me not state that until we take our chance to go and ride and take a look. It will certainly be a key part of our parks master planning process. It's a district by district collaborative process. District 7 is clearly going to be central in that, as are all the districts. So there's going to be a parks plan specific to District 7. Okay. And so today I can't tell you what that looks like, but I'm always open and available to
and I appreciate it, but let's be clear. Mm-hmm. When you think about that plan, just know that Pointer Ridge subdivision is in District 7. Yep. Just know that we're scattered, and we have nothing for all of those kids, and we're about 17,000 deep. Okay.
It is a very much needed effort, and I hear you loud and clear, Councilman. Having been here most of my life, I know District 7 well. And so I identify and understand the needs, and I'm hopeful that we're going to make some progress in that area.
Well, just so you know, though, and I know, like, we all know our areas, but prior to, like, even us becoming a city, nobody really had any concern over those areas. A lot of the areas thought that they fell into Union City, some College Park, but now my area goes all the way with that Fife community to Pointer Ridge. So they're completely left alone. So I just gotta, you know.
Well, as I frequently told my staff over the last year, Councilman Beck, that was then, and this is now. I'm convinced we're gonna make a better difference.
Right, and I think that you may have sent that land, that document to Khalid, and Khalid never sent it over to me. We said it in that ride. We need to get that,
yes, sir.
That email.
Yes,
Khalid, next.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Phillips. Colleagues, we have about 5 more presentations on the budget, and we have 1 presentation from Aerotropolis. So let's move.
The next presentation is Public Works.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Melanie Winfield, and I am new to the city of South Fulton, but excited to be here. I am from the city of Memphis, where I have spent several years in municipal operations and then in DC for a short stint. So while I'm new to the city of South Fulton, I am not new to government operations. And I have the pleasure of presenting the Public Works budget as we prepare for the Public Works transition team and to transition over to the city of South Fulton, as well as to stand up the Public Works Department as a whole. Before we get started with that, I also like to note that my presentation will be a little bit longer than the other ones because as we prepare for the transition, I will be soliciting council's vote for us to make that transition on November the 5th, make that our official transition date. So while we're shooting for November the 5th, well, November 5th is the target date, we will be shooting for October the 29th. So in the event that we're able to fast track that sooner than later, we will come back and seek that approval from this body. So with the Public Works, our goals are to successfully transition and transfer operations from Fulton County to the city of South Fulton, to develop a comprehensive list of the various city assets, including the location and the condition of those assets. What we have found during my short tenure here is that we have inherited quite a bit of facilities as well as some equipment from Fulton County, but we can't, I mean, as you all have alluded to tonight, the condition of those facilities are not in the best shape, and so we're really going to be focusing on how assessing those facilities and developing a streamlined list of the inventory as well as the condition of the inventory so that we're not always being reactive in maintaining those facilities, but how do we develop a preventative maintenance program to sustain the facilities for the long term. We'll also be looking at developing a comprehensive transportation plan in terms of how do we go about maintaining our sidewalks, our streets, and our right-of-ways and curbs and those types of things. And also looking at that from a regional standpoint. There's been a lot of conversation about shared services. Thank you all for your support of that, but we will be looking to implement a shared services model where we centralize most of the supports for the city operational departments, therefore allowing those departments to focus on their specialized expertise, and the facilities maintenance, the fleet maintenance, those operational duties will be centralized, freeing up their time to focus on their task at hand. Creating and/or updating policies and procedures to effectively and efficiently address the needs of citizens. As we prepare for those operations to transition, we realize that there will definitely be the need to develop processes to better guide our efforts and to make sure that we're responding to citizens' needs in a timely manner. Then we'll look again to maintaining the assets and the facilities that we receive. Again, putting together a schedule to maintain the grass cutting, the streets maintenance, sanitation services, litter and debris pickup, and just looking at the model to see how to be most effective and responsive in meeting the needs. And communication, develop and implement an outreach and information sharing system to educate residents. So utilizing our website and other mediums to communicate to citizens the importance of maintaining a clean community, how not to clog their drains with grease and those type of things. They're just using our platform to also be an educational tool. Within the budget, you'll know capital expenses, and I wanted to highlight within the budget there's a total of $630,800. $80,000 of that for Oakley and Broadneck, $210,000 for the old National Phase 2 sidewalks, and those two projects are related to the GDOT match. So those are existing projects, and that's just the match that the city of South Fulton is responsible for. And then for the resurfacing the major corridors, that is an LMIG project that was funded in FY18. But let me do note that while you see $104,000 reflected here, the actual amount should be $350,000, which is the amount that was funded in FY18. And so we would need to be consistent with the funding. And why you see $104,000 here is our fiscal team thought that we could break their costs up over 2 years, have $104 this year and $104 in FY20. But after talking with the Public Works team, they are of the impression that the 19 budget should be $350,000 and that they expect the project to cost $350,000 in FY19. And 20 as well, because it's a 3-year project, so the $350,000 in 19, then another $350,000 in 20. And then we also look to purchase a street sweeper for $140,000 and some pool cars for $96,000. And you'll see another footnote that equipment costs are not included. So we've been in conversations with Fulton County, and while they have given us property for $1 in the past, this time around they are seeking to receive fair market value for those equipment. And so we will allow our attorneys to dialogue with their attorneys, and we'll try to figure out the most cost-effective way for us to procure the necessary equipment and materials that we need. And just so that you know, they have proposed, they've given us the list of the equipment and the proposed cost, and it's at $1.4 million is what they gave us last week. So again, we will try to find more cost-effective ways to obtain the necessary equipment that is needed. Within the operating budget, total of 3.8. So in the budget book, you saw general services were broken out separately, and then there was a separate section for public works. As we talk about shared services, the general services and public works should have been one combined budget. So that would be a modification that we would need to make and present to this body. But I would like to point out that the general services category was already existing. There just was no staff assigned to that. And Director Phillips has already alluded to quite a bit of his staff will transition from the parks budget to the public works team, again, to provide those facilities maintenance and those fleet maintenance services. But again, to provide that citywide and not just limited to the parks and recreation facilities. And the public works budget was based off of information that we received from Fulton County's public works team. So we will continue to assess the information that is given to us, and as we start to implement the public works team, we'll be able to assess those costs and be able to determine whether or not there's any cost savings or if there's any potential for additional resources to be added, and definitely make sure that we come back to this body to share whatever results we find. There's quite a bit of talk about facilities maintenance and building improvements. And what you would note in the public works budget is a combined total of $350,000 devoted to building improvements. There's an increase from $70,000 that was in the FY18 budget. Again, just trying to add extra resources to make sure that we are maintaining all of the city facilities, including the fire stations, the police stations, the parks and rec facilities. And again, also being strategic in making sure that we have a preventative maintenance program. We don't want to always be reactive, but as we bring this facilities up to standards today, we also want to make sure that we're being strategic and making sure that we're doing the necessary assessments to maintain those facilities for the long haul. Also, you would know $400,000 in vehicle maintenance. Again, with those functions being centralized, that would be for police, fire, parks, as well as community development, and then with the addition of public works. And I'd also like to note that in FY18, the vehicle maintenance budget for police was $150,000 alone, $50,000 for fire, and $65,000 for parks. And so with this $400,000, we're just merging those costs together, but we still may be short. So I think that $400,000 is a good number based upon historical budgets. And for the professional services, those combined total of $70,000. What we're looking for there is, as we get into transportation services and public works services, oftentimes you need those subject matter experts to help with the design, architects to design the right-of-ways, and the traffic calming assessments that I've been sent emails about, to be able to dispatch those studies to make sure that we're making neighborhoods safer. So that is some of the costs that would be included within that line item. And with our personnel expenses, this is a high-level look at the org structure. Again, you will notice that the Parks and Recs personnel has transitioned to our facilities team as well as the fleet team. Well, the fleet team is made up of some of the positions that were transitioned over from fire. So again, just looking to leverage those resources and centralize those services within this team. Also noting that the facilities team from the Fulton County's Public Works Department is not transitioning. So again, we just want to make sure that we had a team dedicated within the city of South Fulton to be able to address the facilities and vehicle maintenance needs that will be needed for the city. And moving South Fulton forward, some of the initiatives that we're looking at is keeping the community safe, secure, and satisfied with increased accountability and responsiveness to citizens' reports, implementing a proactive preventative maintenance program to improve the condition and functionality of city assets and facilities, ensuring the facilities are energy efficient, safe, and accessible by all citizens, including those with disabilities. Looking at centralizing our operational supports, therefore allowing the department personnel to directly serve residents and address those concerns in a timely manner, and sustain the beautification of the city and effectively serve customers by establishing a schedule to timely maintain grass, clean up litter, collect and dispose of residents' trash, etc. So one thing I do want to highlight is that while the transportation team is transitioning from Public Works, we will be looking at their service model to make sure that we are being more responding to citizens' concerns in a more timely manner. I know that right now, I think they're averaging cutting right-of-way grass on once every 8 weeks. And so we'll definitely like to see how can we pool the resources or change the structure of the department to be able to cut that grass in a more timely manner. So those are the types of things that we'll be looking at once the transition takes place. And so standing up a world-class public works department, first we're looking at hiring a public works director. The position is out now and it will close on this Friday, August the 31st. We're looking to have a smooth transfer of transportation from Fulton County to the city of South Fulton. Adhering to the T-SPLOST schedule, understand that there are 13 projects underway and those projects can be accessed on the website. Looking at leveraging technology and streamlining our service model. So there's been a lot of talk about smart cities, and so again, with the facilities team, we'll definitely be looking at how do we make our facilities more energy efficient, how do we incorporate green initiatives to make sure that we're being good citizens of the environment and those types of things. And then just engaging in strategic planning so that we are strategic in our efforts and that we're just not doing things willy-nilly, but we have a true purpose and a vision for why and how we're going to go about doing things. And our timeline for coordinating those shared services will be ongoing. We definitely want to make sure that we're educating our department heads and the staff on do this transition from one department to another department and just making sure that staff is aware of what those functions are. Evaluating services and our long-term plan, and then formally implementing the shared services model beginning December 1. Again, we're looking to hire a public works director sometime in mid-September, evaluating our facilities and fleet assets. Again, looking to hope to have that accomplished by December 1st, and then develop a maintenance plan for how do we go about maintaining those facilities and making the necessary repairs. And then onboarding new facilities as they come on board. That will be just ongoing to talk about a transportation facility, a police headquarters, and other facilities that we may bring on board. And then establishing service level agreements with the various departments so that they are aware of what they can expect from the facilities and the fleet maintenance team and what we would expect from them. And so our transportation inventory, I touched on this previously. At this point, we're not sure exactly how much that cost is going to be. We received information from Fulton County, but we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we're being good stewards of the citizens' money and trying to figure out ways to find ways to cut that cost. So the transportation transition, this is just primarily geared towards transitioning the Fulton County team to the city of South Fulton. And what you'll see is that with the technology, we look to have all of those issues resolved by October in preparation for the November transition date. Onboarding the staff, again, will begin in September of this year and hopefully be finalized by November 5th. We're looking at transitioning the Fulton County staff, but again, we're looking at their model. What has been communicated to us is that they're pretty top heavy. So we just want to be do our due diligence to make sure that that model fits what the city of South Fulton needs. The capital improvement project will continue on. Uniforms and equipment, we'll hope to have a resolution for that by October 28th. Assuming contracts, so we requested a list and description of the various contracts that Fulton County have, and we want to be able to assess those contracts and see if those are something that we want to assume or we want to try to engage in different relationships. Have the assets transferred by October 28th, 2018 as well. So for an effective transition, we're looking to transition staff as well as hire new staff if necessary. Completing the outstanding projects, we're maintaining a list of projects that have been submitted to Fulton County. So that come November 8th, we'll be able to have checked off everything that they were supposed to do within this prior to this transition. Maintaining equipment, adopt their stormwater plan, and then make any changes to it as we need to. Assessing the organizational change in their org structure, again, just trying to develop a model that will best work for the city of South Fulton. Continue to implement the LMIG and the T-SPLOS project, incorporating technology and transitioning into technology. And then with Merck Miles, we're also began conversations with Fulton County in terms of us operating Merck Miles. We think that would be a good solution to help curb dumping and the illegal dumping by being able to have that resource and be able to share that information to the community, that when they want to dispose of bulk items, that is a resource that they can possibly use. So we're in talks with them, we're waiting to receive information in terms of what it costs to operate and those types of things. And that concludes my presentation, and I will entertain any questions that you may have.
Kind of, we have 3 people who want to speak. Let me first caution all of us that there's ongoing conversation between us and Public Works and some possible things going between our attorney and their attorney. And so I will be truly guarded in my conversation.
Mayor, I highlight 2 things that might curb some questions before they start. I think one of those items that we want to look at is once we give them the letter, and you guys do have to, I think, vote to approve us to take the action to notify them that of this November 5th date. And it is easy for us to set the November 5th date and then move to October 29th if we complete early, then vice versa. So I think that's one area. The second piece is that from the Fulton County perspective, is that on the date that they separate, they are simply no longer Fulton County employees, and it does not mean that they're automatically City of South Fulton employees. That is just one nuance that needs to be clear. I think the second piece is that their personnel, especially for the more executive professional staff, is a lot higher than what we have normally traditionally budgeted for. And the bulk of their services also take place outside of that executive staff, meaning you may have the budget that we showed you, but there's additional funds that are for everything from 3 different contracts. And we haven't gotten all of the contracts that they have yet, but in short, transportation is expensive. And so the service model that we decide on is going to be very important to how we sustain transition. And I know key things that are important to council besides mobility include beautification, right-of-way maintenance, et cetera, around the actual maintenance. And so the way they are set up, I would say, is not in alignment with council's focus on maintenance. And so we kept slipping in that conversation about service model, but that's going to be something that is very important for the council to consider and give guidance on.
Okay, Mr. Khalid, Ms. Willis, Ms. Gilyard, and Ms. Baker.
Excuse me, can I just withdraw? I'd rather submit my questions to you.
Okay, that's a good idea. That takes Mr. Khalid.
Okay, I too am going to save some questions, but this centralization, the maintenance departments, I don't know, do fire and police have their own maintenance departments?
Fire had a maintenance department, I don't know that police per se.
Police contracted it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so is fire's maintenance department moving over to this new facilities department?
Yes.
Short answer is yes.
Please.
I think we should give a little bit more detail though. So there was a position for maintenance support in police that would move over. It was never filled. It was just a position. And so that would move over. I think for fire, I believe they had, let's say, a total of 6 positions and 4 of them would come. So the primary people who are providing this service would be centralized, but there is a need in a department like that, especially with, they have equipment like no other group in the city. And so there is some expertise that would remain.
And then, is Mr. Phillips, he's gone.
No, he was just here. He messed up.
So, I'm wondering how many grass cutters, because I hear what you're saying, Mayor. You want parks to cut the grass. But I'm wondering.
In the parks and on the side of the road, you use those words.
Yes, they'll be.
Well, because my concern is, and I'll just jump to what my concern is, it sounds like since the county workers aren't coming, we just cobbled together a public works department from the other maintenance staff that already existed. And so if there are 20, he said there was like 692 acres of parks. If there are 20 grass cutters that are already doing 700 acres basically, now we're gonna give them another, I don't know how many thousand acres. I'm concerned about that.
That's not correct. So we would bring them in, they would continue to cut that service, and the people who are doing the right of way, et cetera, would still be specialized, and they're in, so these are transportation folks that we're referring to now. They would just be housed under Public Works. Our model actually looks very much like the Fulton County Public Works Department, except for it's a little bit smaller, and you are simply, I'll just be short with you, all of our folks are used to centralized services. And so in Fulton County, they're not handling their HR stuff. They're not handling their procurement stuff, because centralized services is also doing that. There are 4 people, I believe, you saw with human resources when our director went through her report that would be moving under her. Well, they're already supporting that function for HR now. They're just actually aligning appropriately. That also has to do with that classification issue that we highlighted for you guys previously. So it's really an alignment issue, but the model looks very similar to Fulton County. When you start talking about manpower though, not only are we bringing in those maintenance folks, and I think you saw that in the 16 or 18 it is, but then there are 4 additional ones that would also help with the general areas. When you look at the public works transportation, one of the things that they gave us insight to is that there's not a specific stormwater crew, and there needs to be. And so there's some alignment there that also has to happen. So it is not a reduction in service at all. To be honest, it's just ensuring that the management is set up to ensure that each one of those areas is being hit. So Director Phillips can work on ensuring that our programming and STEM activities and new park rangers are all operating in the parks, while somebody who is focused on facilities and assets is targeting grass cutting, repairs, air conditioning, et cetera, et cetera. So it's aligning everybody to their focus of responsibility.
And if you look in the org chart, it shows where those functions will remain segregated. So there is a facilities team that has some dedicated groundskeepers who will continue to maintain the parks and other city operated facilities. And then within the transportation team, you have a transportation construction and maintenance crew who will maintain those right-of-ways and those curbs and those types of things.
It's really who manages them and ensure, and who can be held accountable to make sure those dates are hit. So you don't have a 8-week time period that is being cut. It can be done in 4 weeks, and it's managed to a process instead of having it kind of floating out there and not getting the level of service that you really desire.
Okay, so last question on management. these people that we're moving around, we've told them that they're moving around? This is the first time I've heard about it. So I hope this isn't the first time they've heard about it.
Well, so it's yes and no. So all the department heads are very clear and sure of it and have helped come up with the process. But until council passes one thing one way or another, there's no official correspondence that goes out. And so the idea, the budget is simply a proposal. And so if council agrees that this is the best way to move forward and you ratify it, then we will move that process forward. I think that's why you saw those December dates. So you wouldn't, with the September 11th, and I think Mr. Malazzi has proposed moving back the ratification until September 18th. Potentially, if you guys wanted more time, that would not allow us to implement all of these things by October 1. It would just be too short of a time period. I think the other elephant in the room is that having some adjustments to the Fulton County Public Works model will also take some adjustment, knowing that we don't want not only do we not want an interruption in services, we don't want to regress at all. And so we would maintain what they were doing and then ramp it up by December 1st.
All right, so final comment, put my Mayor Edwards hat on and say, I don't need a response, but we're not going to vote on this budget until September 11th. It won't be finalized until September 11th. And there are some city workers that may be watching this tonight or may get calls tonight, and so I don't think that we can wait until September 11th to start having those conversations with people whose departments might be moving.
I just want to say something because we need to move, because we got 5 other presentations, and we're going to be having presentations the next time we have a council meeting. I didn't see any mention about sanitation. Sanitation is supposed to go in public works, so I guess I want to see how that is going to be incorporated, and if we're going to need additional staff for sanitation. I don't see how we're not going to need staff for the overseeing of that process.
So the Public Works Director is the primary person that would oversee that process, and so, but it is a contract. And so while there may be some additional, and I know that Mr. Malazzi mentioned this when we have had additional conversations about sanitation, but those positions can be created and paid for out of your sanitation revenues. And so for the purposes of this presentation only, the Public Works Director is by default, we'll call him your contract administrator for sanitation. And I think there were, and I don't know them off the top of my head, 2 to 3 positions that would be required. Those would come out of your sanitation revenues, which you can't make a decision on until you actually have the sanitation vendor. And so some of those things, we have not put the cart before the horse, but we know what those roles would be and what the revenue source would be that we paid for.
Okay. Mr. Baker?
Real quick, there was a number on the first page in reference to phase 2 of the sidewalks on Old National. And I guess I'll reserve my comments for an executive session. But how soon are you expected to make the payment from us for that 820?
So that will be in FY19 according to the schedule that has been presented to us by Public Works. I think they've already done design services, and so they're waiting for this to actually begin the construction.
Design has been paid for.
We've already paid for it?
No, so I apologize. The design structure, and I know in that link that's in your presentation, it shows, you can go there and see where all of the projects are, but the design portion, I would say for 90% of the projects has been taken on by the county already. And the construction portion is what's taken on by the city.
Right, and I just want to know that those are federal funds released before we were a city.
But the responsibility moves, and I think that's why we said the transition is expensive, because while the projects were already gone after or approved prior to us being a city, the design portion is the portion of which the county pays a percentage. By the time the construction comes on and is under the city's purview, then our responsibility is to take on those various portions. And so we've already done that for about $1 million in projects that we have funded for the most part. I think LMIG is a great example. Our portion was about 20%, and GDOT deemed us the responsible party, and so we have taken those on. I think you'll hear from Mr. Valenzuela on that tonight and have the opportunity to approve or deny. But for these federal projects, which all the design phases would not be complete until quite a bit after we transition as a city, our responsibility is about 20% on those as well.
I'm clear on what our responsibility is, but he came before us before and we discussed this in detail, and I think we're at, yeah, I know, and we'll speak later. I just table it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, I think the municipal court will come to move fast. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. I have the pleasure of presenting to you our FY19 budget for Municipal Court. Mr. Clerk, was the new presentation provided in the add-on packet, or it's just on the new one is in there? If not, it's okay. We can go through it, and I can, if we can. Okay. It looks the same, it just has one additional slide and some numbers have been changed since we had additional time. Okay, we'll keep on going and I will jump in. All right, so start out by saying, oftentimes this past year I got up before you and when we talked about certain things, I always said I didn't prepare, I wasn't involved in the last year's budget. Well, certainly this year, that is not only is that an excuse, that's not true, because I and my team have been very intricately involved in the preparation of the budget. Special thanks to Mr. Donald, who really didn't make very many changes to what we submitted to him as what we requested. And so in terms of the funds, certainly the funds that are allotted are things that we requested. There are little tweaks, but we'll discuss that as we go through it. Okay? So the goals for the municipal court. Timely and efficiently resolve traffic, misdemeanor, and environmental citations. Ideally, we'd like to have that done in 30 to 60 days of the issuance of citations. It's important to note that we have never had backlog while the court has been in operation. We certainly want to continue that through FY19. The other goal is to develop innovative and targeted programs that specifically meet the needs of our community. And so we don't want anything cookie cutter here in South Fulton. And so our programs are tailored. What we want to do is tailor those to the needs that we see in our community. So a robust pretrial diversion program. Ms. Jones is teaching me about a pre-arrest diversion, which I'm learning about, but something that we certainly want to look at implementing. A mentoring and shadowing program. I'll have some more details about that during my next quarterly presentation. The fellowship and internship program, which Mr. Donald was graciously allowed the municipal court to pilot this year. I thought it was a success. And we do have someone else who's interested in serving as a fellow for this academic year, as well as educational seminars. And the other goal is to increase the efficiency of court operations by leveraging technology. Certainly online court calendaring, text message reminders, enhanced electronic communication with the South Fulton Police Department will all help move our municipal court forward. This is an additional slide, capital expenditures. I did not include it on our initial slide, although it was in your budget book, and so I apologize for that oversight. But we have two capital expenditures that we're requesting. One is $35,000 for a new or slightly used vehicle to transport court staff to and from Union City. And so, obviously we're a mobile court. We do not have court in the same location that our staff actually reports to work. So they have to get from Union City back and forth to court. If they do that in their private vehicles, then certainly we're paying out mileage. We run the risk of, there are certain risks that are associated, as you can imagine, with everybody driving, 5 to 6 people driving their own cars, as well as the extreme mileage overhead that we have if everybody does that. And so we can cut that down by everybody sharing and carpooling. The city manager and Mr. Taylor have, done something to provide for us a vehicle out of the fleet. However, it's probably one of the older vehicles in the fleet. It's a 2005 Chevy Impala that has been in the shop twice since we got it. So it has certainly seen the latter days.
It runs.
It
It runs.
runs. Now, it does run. With gas, it does run. But, it's been in the shop multiple times since in the few months that we've been given that. So we need to upgrade. And so that money will, that money will assist us in doing that. And then the $19,000 is for e-ticketing integration. The South Fulton Police Department is going to e-ticketing. We certainly need the funds to be able to integrate the tickets with our courtware system. Because without that, and we're still manual and very electronic, that absolutely doesn't work. So we need to put that together so that we can talk to each other on the same page. Okay, operational expenses, these are as printed in your materials. The professional services at $40,000, the contracted services at $361,600. I will tell you that initially those two line items were together, but the budget team has separated those. So the contracted services are your solicitor, your public defender, your judge, your pro temp judges. Your professional services are what we consider to be our other necessary contracted services that are not big contracts like salaries. And so you're looking at your court reporter, you're looking at your interpreter, language line, all of those types of things that go into efficient operation. Communication, $6,000. Building rental, we pay Union City at the rate of $250 a day. So that fluctuates based on the number of days we have in a month. And so that was something that was notably absent from last year's budget. We certainly have to account for that this year while we're trying to look at some sort of centralized location. Until that happens, we need to make sure that we take care of that responsibility. Software at $1,500, travel at $10,000. I will tell you, we didn't use all of that. That is for a lot of the trainings and things that staff need to go to keep up with certifications. Printing and binding at $2,500, dues and fees at $5,000, education and training at $5,000, hospitality at $2,500. Merchant services charge is something new that wasn't added in last year's budget. Obviously, people swipe cards now to pay for everything, and the bank charges for that. It was not included or anticipated last year's budget, and we felt that. And so this year we have a special line item that's designated for that. Office supplies, postage, and the mobile phone bill for the staff. Okay, so personnel expenses. This is what changes a little bit from what I think you see in your packet. As I went through the packet, there's a couple of different personnel pages and outlines, okay? This is what I'm asking for. So the money is fine in the budget. The positions need to be tweaked, because this is what I'm asking for, okay? Chief judge serves as the administrative head. Court administrator serves as the day-to-day administrative head of the department when I'm not there. Clerk of court manages our clerk's office and supervises the staff. Our programs and probation manager manages all court programming, including our pretrial diversion and pre-arrest, all of those things. This year we're looking to do something different. I will be candid with you. This year, as you see in the next slide, we processed more than 3,000 citations in less than an 8-month time period. That put an extreme strain on the staff. We had lots of comp time issues, and so we need to segment out some duties so that we can have some salary positions and not all hourly positions. From an operational standpoint, we need for that to happen. So we're asking for judicial case managers. They would be more responsible for handling the court dockets that are large. But they would be the day-to-day people who handle that, who are in court every day to manage court. And then we have clerks who are what we consider our customer service representatives. And so those will be the people when you call, when you come to the court, when you come to City Hall and want to pay a ticket, those will be the people who you interact with on a day-to-day basis, not generally the case manager. okay? We would also have an administrative coordinator because there's no one who provides any administrative support to anybody in our department, and we need to address that. Also, we're asking for a pretrial officer. We want to have a lot of programming. We believe that one of the goals, I come to the meetings all the time and I hear what you're saying, and it seems to me that one of the goals of the council is to have this very progressive city. In order to do that, we have to have some programming. But we can't have programming without people to run the programming and monitor the programming, and so this person would assist that. Okay, and so in keeping with the city manager's theme of moving South Fulton forward, this is another slide that has changed. I updated it because obviously new numbers come in every day. So as of August 21st, and it's important to note that court has not even been operational for a whole year. So we've received and processed over 3,000 citations, gross revenue collections at $313,000 and change. That's just from January 1 to August 26th. Do want to make a note of that. Before the police transitioned, the police didn't transition until March 26th. Prior to that, all we were getting was traffic accidents. So there was no there were no arrestable offenses. None of that was coming to the court. All of that was going to Fulton County. So these numbers really do not reflect, I don't know if you can detect any trend from these numbers because you don't have any substantial period of time we were getting all of what South Fulton has as it relates to revenue generated from police, code, and we haven't had anything from fire, but anything that will come from fire. We launched our city's comprehensive pretrial diversion program. We've had approximately 100 participants. I will tell you, Ms. Jones gave me, I think, a number last week, Mr. City Manager. Green Team was 852 hours of community service that's been assigned just through the pretrial diversion program. That doesn't include any numbers that I've assigned independent of that program. And so we're certainly working with Mr. Phillips to provide that additional loophole. Community service in South Fulton, as it relates to the municipal court, is only through the Green Team. That is the only way you get community service in South Fulton, and that means picking up trash in the park. If you can't do that, then I think there's some painting or some other park-related activities that you can do. And so 852 hours of that has already been assigned through that pretrial diversion program, which I think is incredible. And then also collaborated with local community-based organizations to provide services to offenders. And so that is the end of my presentation.
Okay, colleagues, what I think we're going to do, we have two people who want to ask questions. We want to look at the timing. I would say that I'm suggesting that we suspend the other three until at such time as you would like to do it, and we're going to let, Aerotropolis said it would take 10 minutes. If I can get them, these two questions asked and bring Aerotropolis up, if that's okay with everybody.
Oh, wait. So one of the people we won't hear from tonight is Public Works. Is Antonio Valenzuela.
No.
That's the regular.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Yeah. All right.
So one thing that you could do, since you have already received my city manager's report in writing in advance, and that's a standard monthly report, we could potentially just move my presentation to that slot in the regular agenda, especially because it's brief, and then that may allow you to still hear from your other two if the council would be open to that.
Is everybody all right with that? Okay, that's good. Then let's have these two questions, and Aerotropolis said he'd take 10 minutes, and we'll really go to the next.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, Councilwoman Gilyard, and you?
I'm good.
Good.
Of course, most of my questions are budget related, so I looked at 2018, I compared 2018 to 2019, and at first I thought that because the difference was a little over $400,000, that it was going to be a lot of money, but I see that you have 6 additional positions, and so when I figured all that out, I said, well, that's not really that much money. So I just want to move on to that, from that to fringe benefits. Now, that causes me a little bit of concern, but I just want you to think about it. Because the difference between the 2 years is $109,000, and that's sort of like a lot of money. That's over 100% than what it is this year. I want to send this to you. So
Because I would like to know the exact line,
Yeah,
the exact line items you're looking
Yeah.
at. Mhm.
And so, this might sound like a silly question, but I just wanted to know, does our demographic support having a court reporting interpreter?
So you'd be surprised. We have had people, not only Spanish, we've had, what was the other one? URDU. Urdu. We've had Urdu, we've had Russian, we have had Korean, Chinese, we've had it all.
Okay.
Now what we do is we use the language line, which cuts down. Spanish is different because a lot of people speak Spanish. But when you have these unique languages or less spoken languages, we use the language line.
Okay, and the capital budget doesn't include a plan to move the courts to another location over a 5-year period. So what I'm hoping, and I know that there's not that many opportunities, but I'm just hoping that something will fall out of the sky and we'll be able to do that. But
If I may address that, we're looking. The city manager, Chief Meadows was sitting here, but I don't know where he is. But Chief Meadows, the mayor, we have scoured the city.
Okay.
We just had various, not necessarily specific requests,
Okay.
but yes.
So the last one is that I looked, I saw the number of citations, and somewhere in all of this, I saw how much revenue that you're generating, but I don't see it in the revenue line of the budget. So I don't know where it is, and I'm just gonna send this to you and ask somebody to find it, because I
Sure.
can't find it.
Sure.
Okay, all right? I'm finished. Thank you.
All right, Ms.
Thank
Jackson.
you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman Jackson.
What I just wanted to ask, earlier when you started the courts, I had asked about the community service piece. And why are we just using them for the parks?
So initially, when we first started the community service department, community service green team, Public Works had not transitioned. It still is not transitioned, right? And so we held off on community service until we had parks. We have to have a department to partner. You know, my staff is certainly not equipped to monitor people picking up trash in parks. Yep.
All right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Mr. Clerk, would you let Mr. McDowell?
Do I saw him in the audience?
Mr. Mayor, while Mr. McDowell is preparing to come up and do his presentation, I want to ask, can there be one correction made to the agenda? It's on the work session, and it says that we're appointing him to the Aerotropolis CID. Can we have the name of the individual and
We'll settle that up, yeah.
and we need the bio of the individual that is being appointed?
Sure.
All right.
I was getting ready to say good afternoon, but it's almost good evening, isn't it? I am so excited to be before you and have this opportunity to give you a brief overview of the Aerotropolis Community Improvement Districts. You are receiving some material. That's for you to review later. I have a quick presentation that I'm going to go through. Here's a map of the Aerotropolis Community Improvement Districts. For those of you who may not know, there are actually 2 community improvement districts. There's one on the Fulton County side, and the official name of that community improvement district is the Airport West Community Improvement District, Airport West CID. And then on the Clayton County side of the airport, there's another community improvement district, Airport South Community Improvement District. Airport West was formed in 2014. In 2014 is when that CID was formed. And I was hired to be the executive director for Airport West in January of 2015. In 2015, Airport South was created. When Airport West was created, it was created with an annual budget of about $1.8 million. When Airport South was created in 2015, it had an annual budget of $185,000. So the Airport South Board of Directors asked Airport West if they could hire the same executive director, if they could hire me to be their director as well. And so what happened in 2015, the Airport West agreed that Airport South could use the same staff to manage both CIDs. So in 2016, they entered into an administration agreement, and as a DBA, they now both fall under the name Aerotropolis Atlanta Community Improvement Districts. But if you look in your packet, you'll see an annual report that will show you who the board members are for each CID. So there are two distinct community improvement districts, one on the Fulton County side, one on the Clay County side. They have two boards, and they have an administrative agreement to use the same staff to manage both CIDs. And so when you hear us talk about Aerotropolis Community Improvement Districts, we're talking about the two CIDs. In Georgia, community improvement districts have been around since 1988. And since 1988, there are now almost 30 community improvement districts throughout Georgia. The majority of those are located here in Metro Atlanta. Over in Perimeter, this model that we're using, they started with that model about 20 years ago. There are two CIDs at Perimeter. There's one on the DeKalb County side of Perimeter, and there's one on the Fulton County side of Perimeter. They both have their own separate boards, and they have one staff to manage to manage those two CIDs. So we're using the same model that they're using. Since 2014 and 2015, when the Airport South was formed, this area that you see as our CID, each CID is created by Georgia statute for 6 years. At the end of 6 years, the property owners, they actually vote and decide if they want to renew for another 6 years or if they wanted to dissolve the CIDs. And I can tell you since 1988, in Georgia, no community improvement district has ever dissolved, which to me, that would indicate that they're working, that they are actually improving the CIDs, or the communities where they're located. For your benefit, as you look at this map, there are over 600 property owners between the two CIDs. Out of those 600 property owners, there are about 12 located in the city of South Fulton. So you have about 12 property owners that's part of the community improvement district in the Aerotropolis CID. The main reason for that, there are 3 property types that are part of CIDs. That's commercial parcels, industrial parcels, and office. And so that number 12 represents, at the time, in the unincorporated Fulton County, the number of those parcel types that agreed to be part of the CID. Most of those are now along Camp Creek Parkway. There may be 1 or 2 off of Old National that falls within the city. But right now, there are 12 property owners. What did I say, 12?
Yes.
Yeah, 28. There are 28 parcels out of the 600 that are in the two, actually in the Airport West CID. You fall within the Airport West, so you're on the Fulton County side. The other thing I want to tell you about the two CIDs, even though we have two separate CIDs, we act as one. So there are 3 things I want to tell you about very quickly, and I'm watching the clock. The 3 things I want to tell you about, since the 2 CIDs came in formation, there are 3 areas that we focus on: beautification, public safety, and transportation. In the area of beautification, we actually hire a private landscape maintenance company. We have a private landscape maintenance company under contract, and throughout our 2 CIDs, there are over 22 miles of right-of-way that we maintain on a weekly basis. We have an annual budget of approximately $500,000. And so our landscape maintenance crew, they are out every week maintaining the right-of-way located in the CID. We have 5 state roads that are located in the CIDs. We fall in 4 other cities. There's part of the CID in Hateville. There's part of the CID in East Point, College Park, right here on Camp Creek Parkway. There's some in Atlanta, and of course, your city of South Fulton. So we have 5 cities and 2 counties. We work with the public works departments in each one of those municipalities and jurisdictions, and we try to synchronize our schedules to make sure that we are not duplicating efforts, but that we're maximizing efforts. But on a weekly basis, we are maintaining right of way. As a matter of fact, on Camp Creek Parkway, we started out mowing grass twice a week and picking up trash once a week. We're now mowing grass 3 times a week and picking up trash 4 times. We're actually picking up trash on Saturdays on Camp Creek Parkway. They were out there yesterday picking up trash. When I came through this morning, there was trash back on Camp Creek Parkway. It's amazing how much trash is thrown out the windows as folks are driving along. But that's our beautification program on an annual basis. We are also landscaping various areas throughout the CID, and again, we're working with our cities and our counties to make sure that we are covering throughout. And then on the public safety side, we are in phase 3 of our public safety program. In phase 1, we hire a private security firm, and we have 3 patrol cars that's patrolling all of the CID 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We in phase 2, we have a pool of about 15 or 16 off-duty or retired Fulton County police officers, and we have an officer on duty under our watch 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have a public safety director on staff. We call him our chief of police. He holds a monthly meeting with all our police departments, and he also holds a monthly security meeting with all our hotels and other key retail centers. And he's establishing and building those relationships so that we're working hand in hand with our police department. So in phase 1, we started a private security service 24/7. In phase 2, we started an off-duty police officer service 24/7. And now in phase 3, we're rolling out a video security system where we're working with our police departments and our cities and our counties. We will house a cloud-based security system that will allow businesses to upload their security video to this cloud, and any police department will be able to access this cloud and work together as we try to combat crime in our CID. I can give you a quick example in East Point. About a month and a half ago, there was a purse that was snatched out of a car at BJ's at Camp Creek Marketplace. The East Point police happened to be using this video system, and they caught the perpetrator in 20 minutes. And now that they are really pushing out this to their business owners, and we want to partner and do the same thing in South Fulton as well. In Detroit, it has reduced crime in areas where this video security system has been used by 60, 70, or 80%. This is a ambitious program that we believe can make a big difference with public safety. We are investing about $600,000 a year in our public safety program. And then finally, if you can take out this brochure here, and this is what I'm going to use to close with. If you look at this brochure, and you open it up on the inside cover, it gives you an explanation. So we are sister organizations with the Aerotropolis Alliance. We're both in the same office, so both CIDs and the Alliance, we all work in the same office. You've already met the new president, CEO Shannon James, for the Alliance. Shannon and I, we meet weekly. We work together, but I wanted you to see we are 2 separate organizations, the Community Improvement Districts on one side and the Alliance on the other side. And on your left, on the right side of the inside cover, you see what the Alliance focuses on. That's what Shannon talked to you about. And then on the back, what I want to tell you is these are the 4 projects that we have going on right now. We're piggybacking on what Fulton County did in terms of their transit study and what Clayton County is currently undergoing with MARTA and their comprehensive transportation plan. We are now following that up with our own transit feasibility study. We have hired a consultant that started in February. We'll be working all throughout this year through December. And we want to identify some transit and transportation solutions that can be implemented in South Metro and not have to wait 20 and 30 years for these solutions to come to our community. We want to move that needle now and put these potential solutions before GDOT, before ARC, before our state and our federal government to make sure we bring these transit and transportation solutions to South Metro. Our Greenway plan, you've heard about, I won't go into that. There's a freight cluster plan that is coming. This is something that I'm sure you will be very interested in participating in. This will be an 18-month long plan where we receive a grant from ARC to study the movement of trucks and freight and cargo in the CID area. We're going to work very closely with our cities and the county to make sure that we identify the activity that's going on in our communities and come up with a plan of how to have that movement of freight and cargo more efficiently in our communities as we go forward. Again, this is an 18-month long plan. And then finally, I think you also received a presentation on wayfinding and signage. That's an ongoing study that we're doing to make sure that we are supporting the activities, the promotion, of the area that we are calling the Aerotropolis. In closing, what I would say to you is that when you think of the CIDs, our focus is infrastructure. And our goal is to not replace, but to supplement and to support the work that's going on in our community by the cities and by the counties, and to move the needle when there's an opportunity to do so. Sometimes you're not able to budget for a particular activity. That's where you can turn to us for partnership. You can come to us. It may be a $100,000 or a $200,000 study or a $50,000 study that you just don't have the capital available to do anything about it, and that can is kicked down the road year after year after year. You can come to the CID, and that's what we can use our funds for and get it and keep that potential project moving in order to see a potential project come in the very near future. All right, I'm just going to flip through this right quick and see if there's anything I missed that I wanted to tell you. In your folder, you're going to see this map that you see on the screen now. We have a gateway program where all the interchanges around Hartsville-Jackson, there are 15 interchanges. We want to landscape those interchanges and create gateways in our areas and make sure that the area is looking like the bottom picture that you see there. You have a flyer there on the Camp Creek Parkway 285 Virgin Diamond Interchange project that is coming. And on the back, it shows you some alternative routes that you can take during construction. That's going to be starting this month. It's going to be a 15-month long project. It's going to convert the Camp Creek Parkway Bridge to a diversion diamond interchange. That's when you cross the bridge on the wrong side. That improves the throughput by 40 to 60%. So you know how when you get off Camp Creek now and you sit there and the light turns red 3 times before you can cross it? Well, with this implementation, you should be able to be at the bottom of the ramp and come through that interchange in one traffic signal. If this is implemented. So there's some more information about that you can read. So I'll take any questions that anyone may have.
Mr. Khalid?
The mayor and I were just debating, are there any parts of the CID that are actually in the city of South Fulton?
Yes. So where you pick up on Camp Creek Parkway, come after Welcome On Road, like Butner, okay. You know that shopping strip there on Butner?
Okay.
That's the property owner that we would like for you to consider to be your representative on our board. Okay. Shiv Agarwal, he owns that property, and he would be a great representative.
Is there any more along Buffington?
On Buffington?
Right.
Where do you start on Buffington? I'll tell you.
That's complicated.
So, but from 29, so CID covers 29, and it goes all the way to the end of College Park. So if you have anything on Buffington between those 2 points, then we will pick you up there. And there's a portion of Old National that we pick up as well, but it's a very small portion. Yes. On Old National. Like I said, you have 28 parcels out of 600 that's actually in the city of South Fulton. We can expand the CID on an annual basis. You call that annexation. We call it expansion, a little cleaner word. But we can expand, so if there are property owners who are currently not in the CID, but they would like to be part of the CID, we can do that expansion on an annual basis. So if you desire to have more of the city to become part of the CID, we can have that conversation and we can work together to make that happen.
And is there an ask?
Do I have an ask?
Do you have an ask? When Mr. James came, there was an ask to be a part of. I understand that's
separate, yes.
And I do think that we should consider his ask, because they had a financial ask to have a seat at the table. There are different membership levels, and
Absolutely.
I think that we need to get in
Absolutely.
somewhere up there.
I would highly recommend, on the CID side, the property owners pay, not the city. The property owners pay. We only come back to you when we have projects that we would like for you to participate in, and we haven't had one at this time, but we may be coming back to you in the future regarding the Camp Creek Parkway DDI project. I believe I have in your folder to show you that Fulton County, they approved to participate in that project on your behalf, because that actually started before you became a city. And then College Park and East Point are both contributing to that project. But it would be a good gesture for you to show some support on that project, but we'll come back to you at another time. Today was just a meet and greet. You don't ask for something on the first date.
Mr. Gerald, are you
Hold on. Can I finish?
Yes, I just want to say, the contents of my folder are working their way around this room. You can see Mr. McDowell, if you raise your hand, he will have them. If you guys want to look at it.
I have some more information, and I'll leave. Who should I leave it with?
You can leave it with Mr. McDowell right here.
Raise your hand, and I'll get it to you. Yes.
Okay, Mr. Willis, and then I'll accept the motion.
Are you all responsible for the Buffington, is that a GDOT project or is that your project, the Buffington Road and Roosevelt Highway widening?
Thank you. Okay, so on Buffington Road, you know they're going to do a road widening.
Right.
That's a GDOT project.
Okay.
That's a $40 million project.
Right.
But we are, in all of our planning, we have some things that we would like for them to implement as part of that project. And so we are going to GDOT and asking them to include an additional roundabout, to put 10-foot sidewalks on one side of the road and 5 foot on the other. So there are some elements that we are asking for. We're going to need the partnerships of the city to get them to approve that. But yes, that is a GDOT project.
Okay, I'll talk with you later. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we recess to executive session to discuss real estate personnel and litigation.
Second.
Properly moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, we'll be done.
All right, Mr. Gerald.